Steal Brian's line, there's no place I'd rather be on a Saturday morning than with you folks talking budget. Right, this is a little different in years past just because of calendar, right? Matt's going to do the formal his formal budget. God, easy for me to say. Budget presentation, and then we'll kind of go into the traditional workshop. But appreciate everybody's time. Spending the Saturday with us, so let me just stop there and
Perfect.
turn it over to
All right, just let me kind of orient you to a couple things. Everybody has a packet. In the packet is a copy of the PowerPoint I'm going to go through. We also have it up on the screen, and if you want one of the little tablets, I think we have those somewhere too.
We do.
All right. And then, as Jeff said, we will go through from there. We'll break after my presentation, but give you an opportunity to ask any questions that you have and have some good dialogue about that. And I think it will really help to shape the conversation moving forward because all the materials there kind of supplement what's in the presentation. Sound good?
Yes, sir.
All right. So as Jeff said, I'll do a little bit of the more kind of formal piece now that we do on an annual basis. So as you're all aware, a district that really thrives and values continuous improvement, we align our processes, all of them, to our strategic plan. So we always start with the frame of our 4 Board of Education goals. And as the board knows, we're in the midst right now and pretty excited about the revision of our strategic plan for the next 5 years, which focuses on the same goals, but some different action steps. So we always put that at the forefront of our work. So I wanted to start with that. In terms of the process, it starts back in November, and we start with principals, program directors who really spend significant time kind of looking at their spending last year, looking at where we're headed this year, and providing us with information and planning. We move that to December, and we have meetings with our program directors in central office and our principals who present their budgets in a more formal manner. We had the tri-board meeting in December, which I'll talk a little bit more about on another slide, but I thought it was a very collaborative conversation this year that really outlined the complexities and the challenges of the town, in particular to the two last years, with pretty significant budget increases and also pretty significant tax increases for the residents. Just in the last Board of Education meeting, you heard from Katie Crisula, who did her special education program review, and Neil, who went through the traditional kind of staffing and enrollment section. And that brings us to today, where I present the budget, and we have the workshop where we can take a look at all the line items. So there is the number, $89,560,117, $3.7 million increase over last year's operating cost. And right now that number sits at a 4.37% increase over last year's spending. So 3 main pieces of the puzzle here. We're going to talk about the context a little bit, which I think is very important this year because I think it drove quite a bit of the decision-making and the planning of where we're at and will as we continue to move forward. Quick section of return on investment, which highlights some of our achievements as a district, and then we get into the numbers and the finances of it with the budget drivers. All right, so context. One of our favorite slides, it's the balancing act. I think all the boards use it now, right? Like we kind of put the scale up there and say, how do we make the complexities of all this work? So one of the pieces we look at on an annual basis is the cost of living increase, which is a 2.5% increase this year. Inflation, certainly things are still more expensive that are causing challenges to us. Negative projected grand list growth, that's a real kind of unique challenge to this year due to some pieces of the car tax and other pieces with lack of growth in town. The planning process actually starts for the town in the whole a little bit this year, which is different than it's been in past years. We got hit just recently with a nice surprise gift from the state of reduced reimbursement of excess cost. And I'll talk about that in a little bit, but a significant hit to our budget in the current year, and that rolls into next year. Board of Finance guidance has come through with a 2.9% guideline for us to work towards as we're in the planning process. You can see we're a distance away from that right now at the 4.3, but that was put on the table as well. Recent, very positive news, this came out in the governor's budget, is an increase in the educational cost share grant for Simsbury. So we know We knew we were scheduled to see that. It's an $840,000 increase in excess cost. Those dollars traditionally go to the town as a revenue source to offset the mill rate, and it's a significant piece of the puzzle as we move forward here. So that's a positive as well. My budget themes. This is very much more of a maintenance budget this year. I think it's important to come out and say that. Where we meet our increased contractual costs, we're making adjustments for some of the challenges in transportation and special education tuition again. We have operational needs that we'll work through and talk about today. This budget that I present today maintains the current state of our programming levels. And one of the things I want to continue to talk about and put on the table as we struggle a little bit to meet and talk about some of these increased special education costs is that we've put a cost savings idea on the table that the town's working with us on and collaborating through in terms of a specialized program that would require real estate purchase. So that's a lot in a mouthful, but that's where we're at in terms of trying to balance things out. Just a little bit of historical data. We always put up the last 5 years to take a look at. I've organized this in a way you can see what was initially requested in the superintendent's budget and what it was essentially approved at the end of the day. And you can see the increases over time. Last couple years, larger than they have been historically. And that's kind of the history of where we're at over the last 5 years. This slide, it jams a bunch of, it kind of jams up on there. I don't know why that presents that way. Okay. Per pupil expenditure. This is the slide that I take a look at when I say this represents. We don't have an outlier, even though there are challenges right now. Expenditure. We're competitive with our expenditures with like districts. If you can't see, it got kind of tucked up under there, but in the printout you can see Farmington's per pupil expenditure, $19,600. Avon's $20,400. We're right in the middle, $20,500. West Hartford and Glastonbury a little bit higher. When you look at the DERG overall and you look at Hartford County, we're right in the middle in those comparisons. And in the lower right, I've had a bunch of conversations as we're all kind of in the timeline of getting ready to present our budgets to our boards. What other superintendents are presenting as their budget requests to the board. These are the districts that we've put up and compared with, and you can see where Simsbury initial request stands there. Some of these have moved because the processes are a little bit ahead of us, and some of them are just getting ready to present now, but right in the ballpark of where our peer districts are. So, return on investment, kind of celebrating our success. This isn't data that you haven't seen before. Again, we align our reporting with our Board of Education goals, so our goal around student growth and success. On standardized measures, on the measures of accountability for the state of Connecticut, we do really well, and we're excited about that. We still have areas of improvement, certainly, that we've talked about. We talked a lot this year about different areas of improvement at the middle school level. But you can see here, this is kind of a high school page of how we match up in science, in the math SAT and the English SAT among our DERG right towards the top. And U.S. News and World Report comes out on an annual basis. We were in the top 10. We were at 7, which is the highest we've been in quite some time. So some nice accolades for our students and our staff.
So clearly something funky is
Just
going
on
on
the
in
slide.
the projection. It's not Hall High School that should have the start, Simsbury.
Yeah, right.
Okay. Let's just be clear about that.
We do like our friends over in West Hartford.
We love our friends, but it's Simsbury High School that has the star.
This is a look at our elementary when you roll up the performance 3 through 6, upper end of the comparative and the DERG as well. So again, these are the accountability measures that the state makes us accountable for, so we think it's important to put those back out in public and say how we're doing with things. Sustainable and strategic investments, just some pictures. Of course, very proud of the Latimer Lane project. It's got a lot of attention. We got great community turnout when we had an open house there. You can see a couple pictures there about Latimer, but also what we were able to do with some of the extra CNR dollars from last year. We were able to redo the library at Central School. We made some significant improvements to the hallways with basic things like paint and new carpet at Squadron Line that really changed the feel of the building. On the lower right is the Farmington Valley Transition Academy new home in Riverdale Farms. A wonderful program, a program we've talked about a little bit more now as we've talked about the concept of opening our own new program. Sorry about that. Next to Simsbury High School in a similar model, but a real nice space for our students and for our staff in a new home right over the line in Avon. Our goal around creating compassionate and connected school cultures, just a little bit of a data sample about important school climate data. We're feeling good and looking good and on the rise in the data over the past couple years about how our staff feels about the professional learning environments, about how our students feel about a safe and welcoming school environment, and how our staff feels about a professional culture. So all areas that we want to point to and put out there. Underneath, just some pictures about a few of the things that we have going this year that support school culture. The Encouraging Words campaign, really led by Ty and our administrators, we've talked quite a bit about, has got a lot of traction and has had a positive impact on our school community. DECA, which is our business group, has really engaged our students and lifted our community spirit. Our comprehensive athletic programs. I have a picture of Tech Ed over there that represents our comprehensive elective opportunities for our kids. So really a breadth of opportunity in our schools to engage our students. And now to the numbers. Hello, Sharon.
Good morning.
Good morning. Got that car going?
No, we'll deal with it.
Oh, no. You ran over?
I'll deal with it later.
I got you. All right, so this is a framework we've kind of held consistently throughout the planning process and how I'm setting up kind of the financial reporting part of this presentation. Starting with our fixed costs that we presented back to the Board of Finance in December. We've had some good conversation about really what makes up a fixed cost in kind of some of our subcommittee meetings. Josh, I think you've made some really good points about some of our challenges around special education, and why don't we move those fixed costs into that initial number? I don't disagree with that, but for the sake of not moving the goalposts for the presentation, I kind of haven't done that formally as we go through. But to start with our fixed costs, present to you what they are. In the spirit of the conversation at the tri-board meeting with the Board of Finance, we talked about trying to find savings off of our fixed costs. So that's why that's the second bucket, and I'll work through there. And then three main buckets to report out on. Our operational costs. There have been staffing requests in this budget that you heard last week, and then certainly those costs around special education. So I plan to just kind of present in each one of these buckets, and then we can put a wrap on it, and I can answer any questions that you have.
Can I just
Yeah.
a procedural question?
Sure.
How do you want us? Do you want us to just throw the questions at you, get through a section, and then throw? I just don't want to interrupt.
Why don't we do section questions, because the sections aren't that long. That way you don't have to hold on them.
Yep.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Okay. All right. So for fixed costs, a little bit over $3 million in fixed costs, $3.1 million, or a 3.61% increase over last year's operating costs. So when we're talking about trying to drive our budget number towards a guideline or towards a COLA number of between 2.5 and 2.9, certainly a challenge to start when your fixed costs are well above 3. But what we've rolled into our fixed costs at this point, to be consistent, are salaries and benefits, which are certainly our biggest driver. We know that overall about 80% of our cost increases are normally in salaries and benefits, so that's a 2.36% increase over last year. The largest driver there is our teacher contract, which is about a 1.7% increase of that 2.3. Contingency line item, as you'll recall, those are numbers of contracts that have not been negotiated yet, as well as our unaffiliated. So we put a placeholder in there to add to the salary. The health insurance, our initial, the insurance gets a little complicated as we go through, but we'll take time when we get to the workshop component, certainly to iron that out. The original recommendation from our insurance advisors was about a $500,000 increase of 0.59. That was like a 4.79% increase over 4.9% increase, thank you, over last year. Some pension contributions, and then utilities, which was a significant hit this year, namely because of electricity. So you wrap that all up, that's the 3.1 million, or the 3.61% increase over last year. Any questions on the fixed costs portion of this? Okay. So when we looked at our initial planning of how we could move off that number before we got to what the new requests were or the new asks were. So you can just go to the next slide, thanks. It's, we focused on two areas. We looked at our enrollment, we looked at our staffing, and we looked at our retirements first. And asking ourselves the question, are there areas we can try to take advantage of from a staffing standpoint? Again, when 80% of your overall dollars are wrapped into your staffing numbers and your benefit numbers to really move the needle, it's important to think about staffing. So we are proposing a reduction of 4 full-time equivalent positions that are aligned with retirements, so that nobody loses a job, namely in that strategy, and it's about a $500,000 decrease. So I just want to make sure people understand, because we talk a lot about retirements and savings in retirements in our budgeting, right? And normally we talk about, hey, a retiree goes out at the high level, where we could hire potentially at the mid-level, and we save, $25,000 to $28,000. This is different. This is actually eliminating 4 positions, which will consolidate some class sizes for us, but we'll get the full value of this, and we'll still be able to maintain overall programming. So it won't reduce a program or change a program. So 2 of the positions would be at the elementary level. 2 of the positions would be at the high school level. Neil, refresh me on the elementary level. One is one less kindergarten at one of the schools.
Tooten Hills.
Okay, so that's pretty much aligned with projections. The projections came in a little bit light at Tooten Hills. The other is Central School.
Correct. Second to third grade.
So 2nd to 3rd grade, class size guideline in 3rd grade is a little bit higher. You do squeeze it a little bit, so the class sizes will certainly be up, but they will be within guidelines. 2 content areas at the high school. One we're definitely looking at is English. The other, probably science. We don't know for certain yet, because they do those actual class sizes in right about now. They're looking at them, but we don't have them in totality. But again, significant savings there, allows us to move the needle a little bit. The second piece of it is the health insurance. So over a 2-year period, we've really seen some, due to positive claims and how we budgeted that line item over time, we've seen some significant flexibility in that line item. It's been a benefit to us because it's really helped us close the gap actually with some of the special ed expenditure increases. But we're able to reduce that line item by about $1 million overall in the totality. I mean, that's a large line item. It's about a $15 million line item with quite a bit wrapped into it. And that's where you see the 1.5 million or the 1.83% off of that initial fixed cost number. So, good positive movement in the planning process. But again, that's before we put out and talk about what people feel are really important needs moving forward. So any questions on that? Yeah.
Just a question on the health insurance. On the previous slide, you had a fixed cost increase of like $500K and then a possible reduction of about $1 million on this slide.
Yep.
How does that?
You want to hit that, or you want me to hit that?
No, I can do it. So on the fixed cost slide, excuse me, it's our budget from last year with the 4.9 added to get to the $500,000 increase. This health insurance line is truing up our health insurance line. You'll know at the quarterly reports and the year-end reports, I was saying that our health insurance line item was, we came in favorably about like $1 million, $1.5 million, whatever it is, depending on the year. And so that's attributing that savings to truing up that line.
Yes.
Possible reductions.
Yep.
Couple questions there. What does that bring 2 into for kindergarten classes if you eliminate one?
What does it what?
What does it bring 2 into? How many?
2 classes.
So
two
they'd have
classrooms
two.
instead of three.
So I guess and then Central
And
would,
that's not a terrible anomaly. Tooten has had two for
Yep.
a number of years. They sort of fluctuate between 2 and 3 in a given year, but right now, in terms of a sign-up names that we have in the queue, they have 33 kindergartners, so that's safely within 2 classrooms.
yeah, because I know last year Terriffill went to 1, and that was a concern we've raised, is having 1 going through. So we can circle back on that, but I just want to make sure Tooten wasn't in the same boat. And then just overall, I guess the question I would ask the board and everyone is just as we're going through this, right? I appreciate you coming in with kind of some solutions at the start. I still always go back to those slides like 9 and 10, right? Our per pupil, our DERG, and then our ratings. And we're mid in the per pupil, we're mid in what we're spending. The proposed budget is low compared to our competitors. And then our ratings, like, I don't know about you guys, but like when I say like we're right there with like Greenwich, it feels good to say, and I know people in town are proud of that. So, yeah, can we make things work? Can we squeeze things and it's not the end of the world? Possibly, and I appreciate you bringing that to the table. I would just always think like, what are we trying to solve, right? I know that was something, Jeff, I heard you in a meeting this week say that, like, what's the problem? What are we trying to solve? And I think that's a great way to approach this is, yes, we've got to be very strategic with our budget, but squeezing kids someplace or maybe not having everything that seems to be working. I know there are trade-offs, but I would just put that on the table at the start, that just because we can do it, means it's what's best for our town, and is it what our town wants? We always have to keep that in mind.
Certainly. We good here, or any other questions on that? Okay. All right, so the operations piece, and I don't know now as we work through that piece of the puzzle, if operations is the perfect term here, because it ended up being a little bit of a catch-all for everything else that was identified as a real need that we wanted to kind of shine a light on. Overall, in this area of the budget, to kind of support what Josh is talking about, but in a different area, this is a place where we have really shaved over time in a lot of areas like maintenance, equipment, and it's an area to me that's getting increasingly uncomfortable. So I have there's like 3 or 4 slides. I mean, there's like 4 slides here. I'm not going to go through every one of the pieces because we really have the support materials and the people here that can discuss that as we move through. But this is traditionally the area where if we have to kind of go back and try to find some dollars, we've done that, and it's just getting harder to do. But overall, the increase in these areas is about 1.3 million or 1.56 to the bottom line. So some of these certainly would be defined as fixed if we had all that information up front, I think. But due to the timing of it, they're not. So you could see the first couple here, there's not a whole lot we can do, but I want you to see how it moves the number, right? You have your pension contribution, you have your retiree health insurance number, which are both over $100,000 increases. The food service director is a little bit of a nuance. We'll talk more about that later. But that was reporting back from the state that they said due to some degree qualifications, we couldn't sit that in our fund, which is kind of self-sustaining. It needs to sit in the operating costs. We do have some thoughts down the road that I can share later, that there are other costs that are in our operating budget that we can move into that fund, and we can kind of just wash that out. But for the purposes of kind of demonstration at this point, that's the value of that hit to operating. This is truing up our overtime based on the projections from last year, workers' comp insurance, and then disability. There is not a whole lot of shaving that can go on page 1, which is why I put that up there. Yes?
I wanted to really give you the opportunity later, because you said you'll address it later, so
Yeah.
I'm figuring you'll open up around it, because the whole discussion around the grant and all of that, and is that what's funded, gonna help to continue to fund that or not fund that?
You're talking about food service?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, we can talk about that a little
That's
bit
what
later.
yeah.
I mean, just in essence, one thing we can probably do, and we have it on a different slide, is there are eligible costs on and it's not a grant, it's our fund that it's like a self-sustaining operation, so it's a food service fund.
Okay.
So there are other dollars in our operating budget that we can slide to that fund and offset that cost.
Okay.
So it's not new cost overall to the district, it's gonna be a matter of where we pay it out of. But yeah, we can get at that a little bit later. So I call this first line item regular transportation because we have talked about a lot about our special education transportation and different vendors over time. So this is our Salters contract, and this represents the increase to the overall Salters contract that we've negotiating with Salters and JR. Student activities in the club and athletic trainer. This represents our coaching stipends, and it represents moving some level of dollars, about I think it's like 20 or so, from Jeff Pinney's operation that's funded on pay-to-play on a partial trainer into our operating costs. So that it represents both of those costs. Equipment and replacement equipment, library books, special ed supplies, those are areas where we've shaved over time. Those are areas we're going to hear from Jason, and we have Kyle here to talk about that we feel we really need some increases in to just run our day-to-day and keep up with things.
And this is where we reduced last year, right?
Yes, yeah,
The library books and databases.
100%. So, to your point, Sharon,
Yeah.
that is just putting it back in.
Right.
So, right, and this is the, I don't want to say lesson learned, but we've all talked a lot about cliffs and trying not to create fiscal cliffs, but when we lowered the number last year in a squeeze, and we felt we could do without for a year, but you can't run 7 libraries without an infusion of new materials, so this is putting back in what was there last year, and all of a sudden, it's a pretty big hit.
And just to clarify, that's actually not putting it all back, that's only putting a portion.
That's
Portion of
right,
it
because I
back. Yeah.
remember the conversation that we
Yeah,
had.
thanks, Ed. Yeah, and some copier contracting things, new copiers. We've gotten away from the toner, which gave us some savings, but we have more copiers in different locations around the building, and software and licensing. I know Jason's going to talk about that a little bit later. Bus purchase, we've moved our bus purchase request into operating and away from CNR, so we can try to maximize the CNR dollars that are within our operating budget. That's a separate topic for later, where we've created a list, and we have to share with you not only the 500 of CNR, but what more CNR needs would look like there. That's an area for us we've talked a lot about. It's a big challenge. We saw what we were able to do last year with a little bit of an infusion of dollars in CNR, and we went a long way with it. It's hard when we've moved out as significant amount of money in capital as we have, and we may be looking at, I'm not going to say a reduced number of CNR, but that, again, that standard number of CNR.
Just as a reminder, because the number is 250 still, right?
I think it's 500 in our operating
Okay.
budget. It's kind of like a 250 if we put the bus in that line item.
Oh, okay.
We're trying to take the bus out of that line item. The bus is crucial, one way or the other. We have an our fleet is aging, and we can't continue to. We don't get enough financial bang for the buck to keep pulling those out. It's being a tough spot. So, all right, the last slide on operations. It's just a roll up of the little things that are left over in other accounts. You'll be able to see that more in the line item. And then that last piece of the puzzle is non-lapsing offsets and grant usage. So that represents kind of the last, I'll take you back to the plan post-COVID. We added some considerable staffing, town helping us out with the social workers. We had some other supports put in place, utilizing the ARPA funding, and we had to create a step plan to pull that back into operating. So that's the last piece of that puzzle, and that's what represents the 1.3 overall in operations and the 1.56% increase. I will stop there. But there is a lot of supplementary stuff that's going to go with that in the packet, but I can answer, or I can take any questions on that piece now too. Yeah.
Just question, use of non-lapsing offsets, why is that budget cost if they're using something.
Yeah.
I might just be misreading that.
So what we had done there, and it was the year post-COVID, budget year, we had an influx of kind of ARPA dollars, grant dollars. So we put some level of staffing on those dollars. Those ARPA dollars go away. We have to figure out a way to feather those dollars back into our operating costs. So they weren't impacting our operating costs. The use of the non-lapsing dollars to pay back into the operating will get them back in the operating costs. Not bad for you.
I was gonna say that sounded like an Amy answer. That would have been better.
He's been coached all week.
It's great entertainment.
We spent a lot of time together.
All right, so the special education piece represents an $890,000 increase. Substantial, obviously, a little bit over 1% to the operating cost. It is not representative of a significant number of line items. So the out-of-district tuitions, that's something we've talked about significantly over the past 3 years. We have done a solid job of keeping the number of students outplaced in our district in the range of between 39 to 43 over that time frame. The challenge we have is that those facilities have substantially increased their prices over time. There's a real supply and demand issue with the number of slots open for students in Connecticut. Connecticut school districts sending students out of state at even further escalated prices. It is a very, very hot topic of conversation among legislators, hot topic of conversation among superintendents. In Ned Lamont's recent budget that was just released, there is $40 million of relief in the wrong year. It's in the second year when we need it in the first year, but it's a step in the right direction in terms of unifying the conversations. But
That's just an increase from last year, right?
that's an increase from last year.
I'm curious to know what that number is over like a 5-year period, because it's every year we're like, wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Like we know what the total budget increase is, but I wonder what that is, like.
So we can pull
$3-4 million, if not more.
not of an increase, but it's a $5 million. Yeah, we could pull that for you. It's a $5 million. So it's an interesting thing to look at in our operating budget, because from a gross standpoint, it's about $5 million. So this is 10% on $5 million plus some flexibility for potential 2-student tuition to give ourselves some level. This is an area that's been hard to budget for. We get excess cost back. So in our budget materials that you see at the end of the day, we budget net excess cost, which is what the state just cut.
Yeah.
So it's about $3 million, I believe, in our operating budget book, or will be at the end of the day. No, the totality. So excess cost offsets about $2 million of the $5 million in total. But to your point, we could bring that Tuesday night to you. I think it's a good look. What has that looked like over a 5-year period? Yeah.
So let me ask a question about, since you brought up excess costs. We always talk about that and we never get what we supposed to, right? So when you're budgeting, are you budgeting based on what you should get, or are you budgeting based on
Great
what
question.
you got in the previous year?
Yeah,
Because
so-
we're never gonna get it, right?
Well, we've changed our strategy over time, certainly, Sharon.
Yeah.
So last year, I think, what was our percentage last year, Melissa? We got 68%.
Right.
So we budgeted on 68%. 68% is the lowest we had ever gotten.
Right.
So the news we just got the other day was we're going to get 59%.
Right.
So that's what leaves the hole. So it's become if we're going to swing this number 10% a year, it becomes almost impossible to budget for. So that's what's created the hole. We normally do it based on what was last year, the prior year, but it may be something we have to think differently about in the future.
And what's the last time
If I
that
can
we-
pile on, that number also has gone down 20 percentage points in 3 years,
Yeah.
5 years.
The reimbursement.
Yeah. So
So what's the last time that we got even close to,
100%?
not 100%, but even
80%?
close? Yeah.
It was during
We
my
just
tenure.
pulled that 22, fiscal year 22.
Okay.
So
I
it
just
has
wanna
been,
understand.
it has been a significant decline.
Right.
As the need, again, it's the needs go up,
Yeah,
same pot of money, and it's just redistributed.
yeah, because,
And they've gone to a scaled system as well. So they've gone to, where does your town sit from an economic kind of status? And we are we're not in the sweet spot of getting the larger reimbursement.
that's right,
Yeah.
that's right. Well, and I was just saying it from a standpoint of when you talk about, what's happening in Hartford, that being something that to me should be elevated in a sense. Either readjust the number,
Yeah.
right, so that you can budget more reasonably and stop having us expect or look towards that.
Yeah.
But I mean, the fact
I think
that
this, to your point, this 10% drop,
yeah,
this is what the catapult was for everybody coming out and finally getting unified from a conversational
Yeah.
standpoint of,
Yeah.
there is no way to sustain this kind of
right,
reaction current year, right? Because you have to respond to this current year.
that's right.
And then you have to do it moving forward. So you can see that's the impact, the next line item underneath tuition of the excess cost reimbursement shift for us, moving forward. Transportation, about 162,000, that's kind of that third-party transportation we've talked about, as well as some of the Salters portion of special education transportation. We've tried some new things there with a new vendor, consolidating our third-party transportation. So we need to get into it a little bit to see how we do, but I like the moves we've made and in terms of not having multiple third-party vendors, having one third-party vendor to manage our operation. Slight bump in contracted services, and that is a 1.3 million overall. What I've demonstrated here, we've had conversations with Board of Finance of a willingness to hold us harmless on the 411,000. So if I pull that number back out, it's an 890,000 increase. You can't see it at the bottom of the slide, or a 1.04% increase overall. Okay, so the last bucket. Any questions on that? I'm sorry, I'm moving too quick.
I'll just reiterate what you had referenced before. My take on this has been, if there's nothing we can do about this in any strategic manner,
Yeah.
how is it not fixed?
Right.
I would just say that, so if you take this and appreciate the Board of Finance with the hold harmless on the 0.48, but that 104 on top of a 361 fixed is 465.
Right.
If there's nothing we can do
Yeah.
to negotiate, do anything about out-of-district tuition, transfer, if there's nothing we can do about it,
Yeah.
it just feels very fixed
Yeah.
to me.
No, I get it. Again, and for the sake of not moving the
Yeah, no,
goalposts
I
and
just-
coming up with a number that looks so different than when we got together. But I don't dispute that. I mean, when I say nothing we can do about it, we can't control their contract costs.
Right.
I want to put back on the table the great conversation we've had at this board in supporting the program concept to start our own program.
Absolutely.
Because the state is now, the other thing in Lamont's budget is $12 million. Again, it's out in the out year of grant opportunities for districts to do exactly that. So I am hoping there's opportunity to even grab dollars back and be at the forefront of that. That would be my strategy to try to cost contain. But you're right, I can't do anything about a River Street or an independent school saying we want 8 to 10% more next year.
Right, and I only bring it up as we negotiate this, and there's gonna be trade-offs, right? Fixed is a number people see, 3.6.
Yeah.
And then this happens, and this happens, this happens, you end here, but I feel for us, it's almost like we're starting at 4.6. And then how do we get that number off 4.6 with strategic discussions?
Yep, understood. So staffing, we had the staffing presentation a couple weeks ago from Neil and Katie, and I believe there were about 4.0 or so positions requested, some special education positions, a little bit of music FTE, and a reading position over at Central School. So what I've done in the presentation of this budget, and let me explain why I've done it, I have not moved forward any new staffing in the presentation of my budget. In terms of both a little bit of Josh, to your point, I guess, strategy and a little bit of recognizing the context we're in terms of what's been communicated to us by multiple boards, and also recognizing the investment that this board has made in the last 3 years with staffing. And Neil has that data to share after. Over 20 positions added in staffing to our organization to address the needs. We have been collectively very supportive of our requests. You have been very supportive of our requests. My concern about putting new staffing in the budget at this point of the process is where are we in terms of where we're gonna have to be at a final number? And I just don't feel comfortable, nor does my team feel comfortable, and my principals even understand this. If we add staffing in and move forward and have to make reductions to offset that, I can honestly tell you, I do not have good places to go with staffing to offset that based on what we've done already. So I would hate to go back and start to cut at the core of math coaches and language arts consultants and the very few remaining resources we have to offset FTE. So if new goes in, I don't see any way around new coming out as the first thing if our budget does get reduced. So this puts us at least at an even playing field from a conversational standpoint and a demonstration that our budget does reduce some FTE based on enrollment and a little bit of squeeze, Josh, as you talked about, that we have to talk about or look at. But what I would say on some of these needs, because there are needs, this is as you see, it's a large operation. It's got a lot of moving parts. It's $89 million. It's over 800 staff members. As more retirements come in, as we hire new people, as we continue our conversations on what's working in buildings and what's not and what might we want to do differently, I'm always very open to trying to flush out FTE, meaning, right, like somebody in a position leaves Simsbury High School. Hey, Maggie, you want to have a conversation with Neil and I about those dollars and how we might reallocate them somewhere else? So my thought would be, no today doesn't mean a hard no and that we're not looking. No means where we are in the budget process right now. I don't feel comfortable with an alternative for this board to say I can go find it somewhere else, which is what we normally do. We've been pushed to reallocate our new staffing over time because we have flat enrollment right now. We're not in a place where we're responding to increasing class enrollment. But do I think through conversation and the work of the hiring process and the hiring season, we could find room somewhere to do some things down the road? I do, but not comfortable enough now to put my foot in the dirt and say this is a new FTE and have the board request of me, okay, where would you find those dollars? Because as you can see, I can't really find them in operations. And I don't feel comfortable saying I have 2 or 3 full-time equivalent positions here that I value less than what these requests are. So it's a little bit of a jam for us in terms of the work we've done over the past of the course of the few years and kind of the financial picture that's being painted to us. So imperfect, certainly, but that's kind of an honest look of where we are and how we're looking at the new staffing requests right now.
Just a housekeeping. Jess just texted me. She can hear Matt fine, but she can't necessarily hear us. So just speak up.
Surprise!
So.
Thank you, guys.
Hear you.
Any questions on that? Or I mean, we can have some dedicated time certainly to talk about the staffing once we wrap this.
Makes perfect sense to me.
Okay. Yep. All right. So this is kind of the final roll up of the costs. Your fixed costs 3.61. The potential reductions 1.83. The operational costs an additional 1.56, and then the special ed costs an additional %, and that's how we collectively get to our 4.37% increase. That is a wrap on the 4.37. I can take any questions on that, and then we have some ideas to share from there.
And I don't mean to jump the gun, but let me just I appreciate this, and this is actually obviously a better starting point than where we've been in the last few years. But right, the 4.37 is a big delta there, as you said at the outset, between that and 2.9, that the guidance we've been giving. I just think we need to do a little bit more work on this. And again, I know that's where you're heading, but
Yeah.
I'm uncomfortable with 4.37.
Okay.
To be flat.
And we've had some conversation about that. So I put together just a slide, and it's not significant, but this is where I'm going to need help as we move through this workshop certainly and to Tuesday. So I would want to go there and have board members thinking about, Tuesday night, we kind of have an open slate in terms of what we want to talk about relative to the budget. And with a vote date for the Board of Ed on the 28th, I think it is, the meeting after that. So as we're going through with questions, think about what information you would want, and it's a quick turnaround for our staff, but what information you would want us to see on Tuesday night that will help with all of this, right? Just so we can kind of keep it in an organized fashion. But Amy and I went through with Neil and Sue and said, hey, if we had to move this number a little bit, what would our first blush of that look like? And how could we do it where it doesn't impact program? I'm still very much trying to stay at the place where we have the same offerings for our kids next year that we do today. So from a kind of a maintenance standpoint. So this next, these slides are just
Yeah, so
terrible
we're
how
gonna
they
have
come
to-
through. I apologize for that. They look
In the
nice here.
packet.
They look great in the packet. It had something to do, I think, with the switch out to my computer.
Okay. So, and we can't, it's important to note, we can't do these all on our own the way I've presented it either, okay? So that's an important piece of the puzzle. So there are ideas more than there are, I guess, reductions. So the first thing I would say we would look at is that purchase of the bus that we have sitting and operating. We would have conversations with the Board of Finance, with the Board of Selectmen when we get to the totality of this. We need the bus, like I said, that's not a negotiable anymore. But can we gain some operating relief if we can get that bus out of capital reserve dollars? There's a healthy reserve number in the capital reserves. There are a lot of asks for it. I don't know how that'll all shake out. That's not my lane to determine, but there may be an opportunity there to purchase the bus from a different place, and you get some breathing room from your operating costs.
Could the other alternative be that, I mean, is it a look for them to potentially cover the whole thing, or could they come back and say we can do half, and you find half from someplace?
For the bus?
Mhm.
Oh, that's, yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
you got it. We put the library books up there. Sue Lemke already wants to fight me on that one, so that's fine. That will be up for conversation later.
Then I'll have to find it. in
But
my
it was a placeholder idea, and I think it again demonstrates the point of we don't have a lot of places we feel comfortable going at this point that aren't going to have an impact. Sue had talked about some curriculum money, maybe a different way to find that amount. But we put that amount out there conversationally of can we find $50,000 amongst kind of those operational supply line items to lower the figure. So that's definitely an impact to the operation, something like that. The food service director wouldn't impact operations. That would be the shift of trying to find some other things that are eligible in our operating costs to be paid for out of our food service fund, and you're just kind of balancing out those dollars because they're not new dollars. So you're moving the needle a little bit there, and then the overtime, making adjustments on overtime and how Neil, can help us kind of support and monitor reducing the overtime costs. And then the last piece is the health insurance fund. As you know, we are self-insured. The policy kind of guidance for that internal service fund or that self-insurance fund are to have 20 to 25% of your overall claims in that fund. We have 35%. So we have a healthy reserve fund that we can talk about. The challenge is you don't want to create cliffs all over the place, right? You want to true up your budget, and you don't want to spend the next 3 years digging out from a cliff you use, but we feel a reasonable amount of money that wouldn't be too risky is $100,000 at this point of the conversation. So,
I gotta go back to one thing though.
okay,
So here you have the food service, I mean, overtime is 20,000 that came from operations. Food service director here is 93, and here it's 84.
yep,
So, we budgeted last year $8,896 for the food service director, and this year we're budgeting the full $93,000. So the $80,000 is the difference between the 93 minus the 88, and then the 93 is the full cost of the food service director that we want to put into the nutrition services fund.
So traditionally, Sharon, you know the book with the colored pages?
Yeah, the one I
You've
like.
brought this up before. The only thing we put in there for food service historically
Like $8,000.
is $8,000. So
Right.
that just trues up the difference.
Okay, and that's what I was,
Yeah.
I think you knew what I was
Yeah.
going through before, yeah.
On the health insurance reserves, so is 100, like, how'd you come up with 100? Because it seems to me you could go to 200 and still have a very healthy, you're probably still way above the guidelines there.
You're way above the guidelines. I mean, there's accessible dollars there. The challenge is creating the cliffs.
Yeah.
And at this
Yeah.
point of the process, we're early still. I can't have Amy yelling at me all the time.
Sorry, I didn't mean to.
Brian, any question?
How does, just explain the cliff with the reserves? So we have excess money there, but if we use too much of it, it becomes a problem.
Because we're not using the fund directly, we're reducing our operating budget by that $100,000, and then that fund is gonna cover it. So we would have to build back in that $100,000 the next year. So $100,000 is not huge. If we look at, people that move in and out during the year, it's unlikely that would end up being a cliff. We could probably maintain that without a cliff, but anything above and beyond that, I mean, we'd probably wanna do some cliff funding.
Which is what, when you go back to that one piece in operations, that last piece, that was that staffing over time. You got to strategically figure out how to buy that back.
Sorry, okay, I don't get it, in that, like, if we already have too much in there, right? We're not required to have it, why do we have to re-put it back in?
Well, because you can't keep using the health insurance fund year after year after year to fund a cliff, because eventually it's just gonna go away.
Yeah.
And then you'd have to build, like, say you used it for 5 years, and then all of a sudden the reserves aren't there anymore because claims increase, you're $500,000 short, we can't build in $500,000 into our operating budget all in 1 year.
We have
I
a
mean, we can, but it
state,
would hurt.
we have a state requirement or federal requirement that says how much you need, no.
That's
No,
our
it's
that's our
budget
policy.
service,
Yeah. And there is a history. I'll say this, and I know Lisa's behind me. It was back in the days when she was the first selectman. We had a very, very healthy fund balance. The Board of Finance chose.
Not me.
No, I said you were the, yes, chose to utilize that fund to offset. It was a very difficult operating year to offset the fund. Everybody was in agreement on it. They went back one more time and they put the fund in really tough shape. And as a driver to your operating budget of that 15 million, if that fund's not in good shape, you're really going to get yourselves in financial trouble. So the challenge with our operating costs is there's not a lot of costs that aren't renewed, right? So anything you take out, it's like what we're doing for the library books. You're going to pay back double the next year almost if you want to get it back. But
I'll let it go.
no, but to your point, there are dollars there that if we can creatively figure out to use, you can make movement on it.
I get you, and I'm totally with you on the cliff, but it just seems like there's a little room there, right?
Could be.
Again, if you go
Yeah.
from 1 to 150 or even 2, you're still probably at
Yeah.
32% or
Yeah.
whatever. I mean, it's
100%. I would say the best way to think about, and this is just my take, the use of reserves is when we get down the road, we get in front of the Board of Finance, all the data is up there, and we're having the collective conversation about what is that ultimate goal, and what are the buckets and levers left that you can utilize to get there without making cuts, right? Because it gets real tough with how you start nickel diming this number when you know you have
I'm with you.
a source somewhere else. It feels like it hurts a little more, you know?
What you're saying, it's almost like I'd rather see 150 there and get new books.
Yeah, and I think all that is up. I think all that is up. Don't.
Then get new books, she said? Rather than getting books.
I'd rather
And
allow us to
and
get
get-
books
Right.
and then take another 50 grand from that. Just
So this again is a blush to kind of show how we can move a number. We're not married to the dollar values and the things. It's just trying to show what we don't want to do. I guess my point of this, and Amy and helping me with this, we can move the number a little bit, but some of these things, they're not cuts in the sense of we're doing without services. I don't feel comfortable at this point cutting, right? Like, I think we took our proposed cut up front. These are areas, hopefully, we can utilize reserves. That 140 would have to come from reserves somewhere, right? That 100,000 would have to come from reserves somewhere. So, just some initial ideas.
I think like when we talk cliffs and things, the other thing too, right? And I appreciate all of that, but and I'll say it again, it's just get on the table. Like it's the I don't want to say it's kicking the can. There's the I know we're in tough times, right? But there's also this element of when we push things out, it's like double with interest to bring them back, right? So we're talking about with books. There was the bus thing last year with the CNR, which we'll get into later, I'm sure, right? There was, I brought up earlier, right, the Terrifill going to one kindergarten class, and then they were going to go back to 2 first. And now it looks like with what we're hearing, to add another first, we don't have the budget, right? And then Central, if it goes to squeezing them in the second graders going to third, and now they're swelling and that, right? Like these things, it's going to be very hard unless anyone's got a crystal ball to bring these things back. And I just always balance, not naively and not taking it lightly, that we're looking at a budget, we want to get as low as we can. I totally respect that. But when we say we're not cutting services, I totally appreciate you're the experts, but we're cutting an experience in a sense, right? Like that one grade level going through Terrifill, not going to switch classes, always going to be the same kid, right? Like you're not getting the same experience as everyone else. Central, right? Are we going to hear from parents who maybe went from 18 to 23, and now that's their experience the rest of their time through the system, right? I know we never say never, but we have to realistically think, is next year, if any indication of last year and the year before is any indication of next year, we just have to think what we cut to get to a number, say 3.9 instead of 4.3. What is that 0.4 really doing for our school system, right? It's not impacting like the core of it maybe, but it's definitely impacting something. And I just want to always keep that in mind, that I want to get as low as possible. And I get what you're saying, Jeff, 4.37 you're not comfortable with, 3.91 may be better. I want us to really think whatever we're pulling out, I don't think we can plan on like getting it back next year. And you're kind of leaving a dent that may impact the experience for our whole school system in general. And again, I don't say it lightly. I know it's tough times, but sometimes we get caught up in trying to get to a number. I just want to think of the students and their parents going through the system where we have these high ratings. People move here for the school system, and at some point you can't keep chipping away at it and maintain your status.
Good point. Yep. The last slide is just a snapshot of the distance we are away even from that 391 to a 29. It's 850,000 with the equivalent of FTE. We're not in a position, right? That is programs, that would have to be a different workshop if we had to go down that road of figure out what to do. And I didn't feel at this time in the process, we're in a place where we've had to try to get to the 437 and try to get to the 391. That's a significant jump with no enrollment relief that allows you to do things without really having a very negative impact to the school system. I would leave it at that. And we could certainly down the road provide more detail on that if we have to.
So I don't know where you're gonna go next, but I was gonna say, do we get to talk about?
Hold on, Jen hasn't gotten in here.
Well, he
yet
was looking
today.
at me, so.
Yeah, I'm asking Jen.
And so the on the core, okay, so Matt already knows I'm going to bring this up, but I want to make sure that like I have to make the pitch here that like the fact that we're not bringing back that Terrifill first grade is going to go through again another year with one class is a detriment to those kids and to the building. And my argument here is that our town collectively, continually has said we want 5 elementary schools, right? We've talked about this a number of times, and and it's always that Terrifill is going to stay. So I feel like we have an obligation to staff that, and I believe when we talked about core cuts, a main teacher and having 2 teachers is a core cut. And so I don't think we should have ever cut that class. I feel like we could have had that argument last year, but we can't go back in time. And so I I do see that Terrifield's gonna have smaller class sizes than other schools, but that's the way it is. I mean, that's what our town has asked for. And so, you know, if people want to move or try to do stuff, I just don't see that it is good to continue not having that position.
How many students are in that class?
21.
So you'd have two classes of
And
10?
did you bring the staff numbers for what squadron and what is all of, like that whole grade across?
Squadrons are 18 and
Squadrons are
19.
about 18, maybe one is 19. I can go to my office.
I'm sorry, what was the number of kids in the Terrifield class right now? What was the
21.
There are
21.
21 kindergartners.
And in this day and
21.
age, when we know that more than likely, we don't want to assume, but more than likely, there's going to be special ed issues, there's going to be other things that come up. Not having another classroom to separate, you know, Joey from Jane for a year is a problem.
And traditionally, the
Would
Terrifield
we-
class sizes are like 15, 17, 14.
Yeah, they tend to be a little smaller
Mine were
than.
20.
Yeah.
My oldest were 20 and 20.
Would we ever consider offering to see if there are families in that grade that would want to move to put in a second classroom there?
Yeah, I mean, I asked that before last year too, but he is then we still have to hire the teacher. It won't eliminate a teacher at Squadron.
And I guess the other thing, and I totally respect and agree with a lot of what you say about having the one piece. One of the challenges would be you want to put that back in. I don't know how you don't go back, put in the central one that we're taking. Like, I don't know how you, this is the challenge with that. You make one there, you're fundamentally making a change of class size guideline, like a lot of reasons, right? Not to get into the soup, and you can support something, but I don't think you can support that move in the light of saying, but we're going to squeeze central school.
Well, I disagree with you because that is different. I mean, we're talking about at Terrifield, there is just 2 of everything. At Central, there's often 2 and 3. And what are the class sizes we're going to at Central?
24,
That-
25.
That third grade would be right at the top of the range at 24 kid.
Right. My angle is,
I'd want exact numbers. Is it 24 or 23? And then, or 25 or 26? And then I don't think
It's
that.
20. It's projected at 49.
They're projections.
So it would be one class of
24,
24 and one
25.
class of 25.
Right. And I think that in the school districts, we've done that in lots of the schools throughout. At Squadron, we've done that before. We haven't done it at Terrifield because we don't have the space and we don't ever have more than 2.
right, or the central thing we discuss, is that fair to central? And then the 2 in retirement, instead of taking the retirement, do you hire the replacement and put it at Terrifield and see, to Jessica's point, do people want to go there if people want the smaller class environment, want that experience? That's what I'm saying, of just to discuss like those possible reductions. We have 2 retirements coming up. We can choose not to fill them, and that's totally a budget move, and I get the reason why. Or we say we'll replace the retirement at Central and not go from 19 to 23, 24, and we'll take the retirement from 2 and we'll put it at Terrifield and get back to 2, so you don't have like one, like kind of like almost like a pilot program going through where they never switch class. Do we consider that as part of the discussion for what's best for the students and their parents?
I hear you, but play that out. So you've got, and let's say a couple families do want to move over to Terrifield. Then you've got 2 classes of 15, maybe 16. Come on, you got squadrons.
But
They're all
who
at
decided
25. I mean,
No, they're
But
not,
Jeff,
because
we
Neil
decided,
said they're
right,
not at
and they're not
25.
at 25, they're at 18, he's just said. And then,
even 18.
kindergarten.
Even 18. I
and,
mean,
but are you then, who?
we can't just say because it's Terrifield they get
No.
much smaller class
They're doing it
sizes.
because the town has said they want 5 elementary schools. The town has said it, not
Not sure I would
Jen
agree with
Bachelor.
that, but yeah.
But the town has. I mean, they have, right? I mean, we talked about closing it and we couldn't, right?
Right.
Or
But I
not.
don't think we're talking
Yeah,
about closing a
yeah.
school.
No.
We're
And
talking
so
about
what I'm
having
saying
a
is because
section.
the town wants it and there's experiences there, each kid
No, I get it.
deserves an experience that is equal,
Yeah.
and having one grade, one class is not an equal experience.
It's unique because it's going from 4 to 3 or 3 to 2 is
I
It's
agree.
different
No
than
big
two.
deal.
one
Totally.
is an
Yeah.
outlier,
It is
right?
a-
What's the
I don't disagree.
projection kindergarten in Terrifield is coming here?
21. Yeah, it's.
No, no, no,
Oh,
no, no,
well,
no.
there's currently a kindergarten there
No.
with 21, correct?
The new kindergarten.
What's the
The
one,
new, we currently have 25 names on the list.
which is more where we're used to being?
12 and
Yes? I
13.
don't know the numbers at Terriffill. Okay.
Yeah.
So,
Again,
so the question,
This is,
It's an emotional, I get it.
see, I keep my kindergarten number secret until,
Yeah, I get that too.
because until we get to March,
Hard.
people
Yeah, I know.
people come out of the woodwork. Like,
no
did
idea.
you not know you had a 5-year-old in the house? Like, where'd you come from? Like,
it's the trade-off of taking retirements or using retirements. And it's-
That is-
so,
I get it.
so Neil, my question, just going back, I mean, I'm in agreement with what Jen is saying about Terriffill, but going back to the central conversation, what are the, when we talk the enrollments and where they're gonna be, where is central and how?
so right now, that second grade has like 48 kids and there's 16 in each second grade class. Your guidelines for class sizes go up to 25 for grade 3. So you take those same 48 kids, they're projected to be 49, and you say, but now instead of being 3 classes, there'll be 2. And it's happened, it wouldn't be the first, second to third grade that's ever happened to. It's happened at Central and it's happened at Tooten.
Right.
In answer to the question of will you have parents who come out and say, the answer is yes, you will have parents who will say that, because they always do when we've done this in the past. But the answer to it is, well, it's within the guideline. We're not going above the guideline that has been established. So that's
I am
how
with
you're-
Jen, though, because like you said, this is truly an anomaly.
Yeah.
And it shouldn't be, and I hate to bring out the E word, but when we start talking about equity across all, it really shouldn't.
The other thing I would say is, at what point do you, 10 in a classroom, is that, we're not, this isn't a master school. It's-
No, we're not trying to get there, right?
Find that anywhere in the
we're not.
state.
I think
Brian,
you
we're
have
not
to get-
talking
No, we're
about
not.
10. Like, let's talk about real
Not?
numbers. Like, I'm all for talking about numbers. Let's not exaggerate.
That's right.
It's never been 10, okay? So it
I
hasn't been.
thought it was
right?
21, so.
It's
I was 40. My
No.
my first
This
thing-
cohort.
This cohort is 21, right? So
That's
they'll
what he's
bring
talking
in,
about.
So they'll have people come in and add more to there, or add some of the kids from
Who will come in?
the Hartford kids. Like, I understand. I was told through that we as a district decided to put siblings from Hartford into 2 different elementary schools. If that is true, which I don't know if it is, if that is true, why didn't those 2 kids end up going to Terriffill?
because they go to the school where their sibling is.
No, they're
Simsbury-
separated.
This-
They're separated. Is what I was told is that there's kids at Central and kids at Squadron that are siblings, or Central and Latimer or something like that. I have no idea. Is it true? I have no idea. But that's what the parents I had heard last night.
Could be
No,
a
in most
preschool,
cases,
but
they put
yeah.
their siblings after, right now, they're in enrollment period. So right now, applications are open, so really, we won't know for students from the choice program until that enrollment closes and until the application process closes, until the enrollment, when they figure out the enrollment in each district and then in each school, because that could change too.
So I would say this, I think it's we've talked about this, it's a really interesting topic. It is a definite anomaly. You say words like equity, I totally understand. I think it cuts both ways. I would say this has got to be something we come back to in the overall picture. I don't think we'll solve it in the next 5 minutes.
I'd like to hear from like Steve and the teachers and people what their opinions are on this.
But I can't disagree, nor would anybody disagree, that to have one super small group of kids going through a school, no ability to vary that experience, no ability to strategically look at things differently, behaviors and all. They're all challenges. But I think you also have to look at, and I'm stating the obvious here, I know this isn't enlightening anybody, but just to cap it, you have to look at the financial pressures we're in. And if you make that move, which is definitely your right to make, you have to stand on that move with the sound rationale, and you have to say why it's more important than other things that are not going to go in, because the dollars in the end have to come from somewhere. And I respect all that, but I'm the one, and my staff's the one that would have to come and essentially find you those dollars somewhere else. So we just need to have that all out there. And
Taking a retirement though, right, is what I'm saying. But you're saying, I think you're saying, but if I don't take that retirement, maybe I'm
You'll
going
have to take it.
somewhere else.
I don't know, hey, I don't know where this conversation's saying, but if we're actually talking about adding on to budget numbers throughout this process, that will be an interesting conversation moving forward.
I was
And
talking more like not taking a possible reduction, because the possible reduction was 4, right? I'm saying what if that possible reduction was 3?
right, so that adds $100,000 back in.
And
That's real
we
money.
have to get down to 2.9.
So that's all I'm saying.
That's our pressure.
Right, and that's my equation, and that's again my rationale of I didn't feel comfortable putting new staff in, knowing we may be in the situation to put it out. Doesn't mean it's impossible to do. Anything's possible to do all these conversations. So this would be one for me.
I just feel
As
like
we-
it's not, Matt, I would love you to consider, like, it's just not a new staff, though. This is not new. This is a core class. This is sort of a.
It's dollars. I'm just talking about dollars, Jen. It is real dollars at
It
this
is
point.
real dollars.
That's all I'm
Wait,
saying.
I think Jess has something to say.
Hold on, Jess.
Can I just finish what I was saying though?
Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Good. So all I'm saying is that I think this is a topic that's got to come back in an organized way if the board really wants to talk about this. And maybe it's a little later on today, or it's on Tuesday of what would be the we want to see this. There's a way to quantify this conversation into decision making, I guess is what I'm saying. Because I respect everybody's opinions on this. What would people potentially want to see Tuesday, what it would look like? So I think our heads have to think about that as we work through, because I'll come back to it, of what do we want this looking like in terms of a budget number and decision making and what people want to say. I think a case can be made either way. I'm just saying it's not an easy one. So either side can't act like it's a no-brainer. You can feel like it is if that's your perspective, but trust me, from a broader perspective, it's not.
That's right.
Hold on, let me try to bring us full circle. Thank you. Let me get Jess, and then let's put a pin in this for later. But Jess, go ahead. I'm sorry, you've been trying to get in here.
Thanks. Yeah, sorry. So I guess my perspective on this is with respect to Central, if we're not adding or we're not replacing the retirement there and bringing our 3 classes down to 2 with numbers that are really tight to the guideline, I mean, I find it hard to then justify adding to break a class of 21 into 2 classes of 10 and 11, especially when you're talking about kids where, I mean, a class of 24 is not what a class of 24 was 20 years ago. You have a lot of IEPs and 504s. So much extra differentiation has to go into the teacher's work. And these are not 6th graders, right? They're still 2nd and 3rd graders. So I would just really pause and think about that, because it causes me some concern. And also, if we do this thing with Central, are we adding in more support for those teachers who now have so many more kids and who will have more adults in these really small rooms? All of it seems a little troubling. And then if you add to it the idea of adding a kindergartner teacher so that you can have, or 1st grade, I guess, so that you can have, 10 and 11, I think it's hard to justify. Jen, I totally hear what you're saying. Having one class for the whole time is difficult. And maybe that's something down the road we can phase in if there are kids who, from whatever school they're districted for, want to go there. Maybe we try and gather a select group of kids to join the Terracil cohort that's so small, but it's just, on balance, I find it hard to say, let's go and definitely do that when we're doing what we're talking about to Central.
Yeah, and I think all of it when I brought up was just when we make cuts, it's hard to bring things back.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Absolutely.
No, it's a great
Keep that in mind.
But as Matt said, let's just so we can kind of keep going here. Think about, like Matt said, we have kind of an empty slate for Tuesday. So just think about, especially with this topic, right? Think about maybe what we want to bring back, and obviously we'll further continue this conversation on Tuesday. Thank you.
Perfect.
Anything
We
else,
said we were going to break for a
Yep.
few minutes after this, and then
Right.
we'll do the line items.
Perfect.
Thanks.
Great. Let's call to order. So we're calling the workshop to order at 10:30 exactly. Now, Sue told me I had to call.
Right. So, First thing we will do is Amy has some highlights of the line items just to go through. That's after the superintendent's budget in the packet. And then we can certainly respond to any questions there, or if there is a deeper dive into it you want to see Tuesday, that's normally a good place to get that next layer of detail.
Did we get Jess back?
Jess?
I don't think she ever left,
Oh,
no.
but.
She didn't leave.
Okay.
She was. I'll
Okay.
text her.
When do we get our color sheets?
That'll be before the Board of Finance meeting. Yep. Yep. Okay, good to you, Aim. Yep.
So on page 2, after that blue separator, the page numbers are at the bottom. So starting on page 2, at the top it starts with general control. So this is your budget for fiscal year 25, proposed budget for fiscal year 26, and then your corresponding dollar and percentage increases. So I'm just going to go through some of the larger ones that correlate to Matthew's presentation, and then in addition to that, we'll correlate to some of the major driver worksheets that we have for you after. So actually starting down with instruction, the second line down, it says salaries, certified teaching / people support. You're going to see an increase there of about $107,000. So I just wanted to point out here that $707,000 does include the $500,000 staff reduction from those potential retirements. So that number will be larger if we reduce those the staffing retirements that were under Matthew's presentation and possible reductions. Oh, sorry. Not good at being loud. Going down further, you'll see the library, media books, and supplies. So that is showing an increase of the $56,000. These are the library books that were cut in the prior year, and we're just trying to add those back into the budget for this year. And then 1-2 lines under that, you'll see the copier lease. This is something that they will go into in more detail later. But again, that $25,000 increase is because we did add additional copiers. There is savings in other line items for the toner that we saved, which I believe was around a $60,000 savings. So the $60,000 offsets that $25,000, but that's why the $25,000 is showing as the increase. But there's offsetting in another line item. Moving down to the bottom of the page where it says pupil transportation services, you'll see that there are contracted services there with an increase of $308,000. You might notice that in Matthew's presentation, his increases for pupil transportation were not that high. For the individual line items. So the 308 here is our contractual increases for our Salters contract, our new provider M&J, and then also built into here is the fuel cost for M&J. So when we contracted with M&J, we were able to negotiate with them where we would pay for, where they would use our fuel because we get it at a cheaper rate because we're a governmental entity, and therefore they use our fuel, and then we get a cheaper rate on the other side for their services. So that is included in there as well.
So, Amy, I'm going to take you back up.
Sure.
The IDEA grant and the Open Choice grant, what's happening there?
Yep. So the Open Choice grant you're going to see in 2 places. So the Open Choice grant on page 1, you're going to see that we go from $798,000 in grant funding to $551,000 in grant funding. But then on page
2.
Yeah, that's on page 2. If you go down to page 3 and you go towards the bottom, it'll say equipment replacement and renewal. And then you'll see OCA transfer to operating. And you'll see there's an increase in grant funding of $117,000. So if you combine those two, we're down in our Open Choice grant by about $100,000. And that's because if you remember when I had spoken at our last quarterly presentation, that we are down 10 students in Open Choice, which is about $100,000 decrease in grant funding. So that's your $100,000 in grant funding that we're losing.
So it's still down 10?
That's what I put for anticipated budget. We won't know until October.
Final number, yeah, it'll be.
October.
Do we have any idea why we're down?
The lottery numbers are a lot smaller than they used to be. It is very difficult to fill preschool seats right now. We open 12 seats per year, and we have not filled those 12 seats since COVID. So that number is down. So
And there's no requirement for siblings to be here for us to do that, right?
we open seats for siblings. There's no
But
requirement
it's not a
that you do
right.
that.
Yeah.
So there's no restriction. Wow.
So
Okay.
But overall, the lottery numbers in totality for all districts are down as, I mean, the Hartford superintendent, I mean, she's
know
outgoing
what
superintendent now, is really pushing that neighborhood concept in Hartford.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Can we
I
just
thought that was a big number. So.
can we just let Amy go through her presentation before we ask questions too on specific line items?
And then the other one, the IDEA grant, it looks like we have increased funding of $322,000. We do not have increased funding here, but what we did is to show a true picture on the salaries. With Melissa starting as the budget director, we wanted to clean up some things. So a lot of the salaries that are offset by grants, we put those into the operating budget, into the salary line items above. And then some of those salaries are covered by the grant, so then we reduced it by the grant. Previous years, there was salaries that were charged directly to the grant, so you didn't see that level of, so you would have, so you have the grant fund, the funding goes there, and then you have some salaries that were charged directly there, and some salaries that were charged to the operating and then offset with the grant. We changed that all, so everything is charged to the operating budget, and everything is offset with the grant. So that's why it's showing an increase in funding, but it's actually flat. If you go on to page 3, from the bottom, from the top, we have water, and then next on that we have electricity. So you'll see the $277,000 increase in electricity, and this is something that we've been talking about throughout the quarterly that's happening this year, where we anticipate to be under budgeted by about $200,000, and this is truing up those line items going into next year, where we don't see any relief in sight on that, so we are keeping our budgeted numbers in line with what we're seeing this year. Down the middle of the page, the food services director, you will see, for Sharon, you can see a visual now of what I was explaining earlier, where we had budgeted $8,896 in fiscal year 25. The full value of the director is $93,531, so that is an increase to the budget of that $84,635. And then right below that, you'll see the student body activities category. You'll see your contracted services with that 40% increase, or $24,720. This is what Matthew had referred to earlier, where we had added an athletic trainer to the budget, causing that increase. And then all the way at the bottom, again, just to reiterate, related to our special education costs, we had built in a 10% escalator, which is around $400,000 for our tuition. And then we planned for 2 additional students for special education, giving you that $670,000 increase in your special education line item for tuitions. And then page 4 is just your non-public budget. Not a ton to talk about there, so if you have any questions on any of the other line items, happy to answer them.
Questions?
Just starting at the end. So non-public though, we did have some, at our meeting, our last meeting, they talked about how they're looking for more services now from us. So is that, did we put that in our budget, or where would that be?
So it's just that placeholder of that $50,000.
Okay.
Anything additional and beyond that is in our operating, and then we would just transfer anything from public to non-public if it's above and beyond that.
So that number never changed from last year?
Right.
I guess just like an overall theme, like when I look at like categories and the whole increases at the bottom of each category, a lot of them are higher than the 4.37, right? 14,900 and something from the food services one, obviously. It's almost like we're being saved this year a little bit by health insurance, right? I mean, and maybe a few years ago it was the grand list, and I'm just trying to think big picture, like what down the road could be our silver bullet or whatever, and maybe it's the new building. I mean, maybe that's gonna help us down the road. I just like, I don't know, going back to Josh's whole like, you know, we're all trying to drive the number down, but like the theme I see is like a lot of these, you know, 14%, 9%, 9%, 950%, like a lot of them are higher than the 4.37, but the big one, you know, obviously is salaries and then health insurance. I mean,
Right. I mean, those are the two when you step back and say, hey, if one way or the other, right, to move the needle, it's going to be there because you're moving the needle in staff 100,000 at a time. You know what I mean? When you're looking at these other line items you're talking about, total line item might be that.
Right.
So that, you know, that's the reality and that's the strategy of the conversation is insurance definitely has been favorable for the course of the past years, not only in keeping the number down, but covering some of the expenses that have escalated on the outside. I do feel good about the fact we have collectively put this strategy forward. I think it is the direction the state and people need to go in.
We can't predict health insurance costs. We can't. I mean, that a few years ago, that was a negative for us.
Right. The self-insurance helps you. I'll go back to the fund balance. You need that healthy fund balance to maintain, to help you ebb and tide big spikes and big dips. That's why you want to be self-insured. But a lot of it is claims in a given year, catastrophic claims in a given year. I mean, there is, you know, I was talking to another district who, I think it was 5-6 years ago, neighboring district made the move because it looked beneficial in the short term to go to the state plan, and it is really, you know, you have no control other than to implement the percentage they give you. So I mean, can't predict, but it definitely is the strategy on both the town and the board side to kind of keep it even, more of an even flow.
Also on the health insurance too, when our health insurance provider and our benefits consultant comes out to speak to us, we are very lucky compared to our peers that our claims are so low because our surrounding towns and our peers that are also self-insured are not that lucky.
Yeah.
So
I don't want to create like a health insurance conversation, but how are the changes that we've made over the last like 2 to 3 years, right, in our negotiations and whatnot, how has that helped us, or is it just kind of leveled it out, or because the costs were, and we've made some changes, you know, the prior auth, all that stuff.
So it's really changes. It's changes to prescription coverage a lot, and then this sort of managed care that there are tiers of things. So certainly in terms of controlling premium cost, our insurance consultant has continually reiterated that our favorable position is due in large part to those moves. So,
just my thought is that we don't talk a lot about that stuff, like what goes into like the numbers behind the scenes, right? And so, just knowing that a lot of work is done to keep it where it's at is really appreciated. So,
Amy, question. The CNR chargeback, 556.9, is that something with a bus, or are we?
Yeah,
that's not up in the CNR, right? That's just something with a bus, I assume.
no, that's just the bus purchase. So it's our regular 550, 300, and then just adding the cost of the bus.
Okay. And then, right, 'cause I'm sure we'll talk CNR at some point, right? And then the only other one I know you touched on, like, I'm just looking at like the big numbers. Electricity, right? Similar to like healthcare, right? We did something. There's probably very little anyone can do for like supplier delivery. Like, you know how people, you can like at your house, you can switch, provide, like, I'm sure you've looked into all that. It's just a big number, and I don't think there's much we can do, but just to ask at least the question, have you looked at that aspect?
Yeah, so our public works director on the town side goes to all of our providers, and we work with an energy consultant to make sure that we are getting good rates. So whatever we lock in at is the best that we're going to get.
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Put on line item? All right. So you're gonna run us through supplies?
I am.
Okay.
So there are 3 major drivers out of my office of teaching and learning. One is supplies, One is textbooks, and one falls into this category of professional contracted services curriculum development. So underneath each column, I've given you a little bit more detail. Certainly, it's not all inclusive of these accounts, but it gives you a general idea of what's included. So supplies, this is everything from classroom instruction to very specific within a department. So you have a lot of science supplies, for example, petri dishes and new slides and all of that, right? That all goes within supplies. Also office supplies, whether they be your health offices or your main offices. So we've done a little nip and tuck there for a little bit of a reduction. That's because I also knew into the next column there would be some additional textbook requests, and I wanted to basically flat fund both of those areas. So if you move over to textbooks, certainly you have, and these are all textbooks that have been approved through our textbook adoption process, but you have class sets that get worn, right? So paperbacks especially come home, they are torn and folded and well used, which is a good thing, but they're going to need to be replaced. We also have some world language text licensing. This goes onto more of an electronic format. I'm often asked, Sue, is the electronic, do you have cost savings there? You actually don't from these textbook companies. They don't make it profitable to move to that electronic format, yet we still need that licensing. Some of these textbooks are in the form of workbook consumables. So we want to make sure that those are refreshed each year, and we have new versions or updated versions of the same texts in AP Bio and AP Psychology that will need to be replaced this upcoming year. So a little bit of an increase overall in that area of textbooks, but I have washed that out mostly with the supply category. Finally, professional program curriculum development. So in here is our platform of EduPlanet, also any curriculum development hours that I set aside. So as the board knows, we have reinstituted a curriculum revision process, and there are certain departments that come on for review every year, and I reserve curriculum writing money in case any changes need to be made to those written curriculums. So that is in this bucket. Any elementary clubs and activities, those are in this bucket, along with leadership team work at the elementary level. Mileage is in here. Conferences, there's no increase, but certainly that's there. Things like advanced study, dues and subscriptions. Amy had mentioned the copiers before. Because that is a new contract, that goes in this bucket. So there is somewhat of an increase, predominantly due to those copiers, but overall we're looking at a modest increase of just under 2% in these three major areas.
Any questions?
Any questions? Okay, then I'll hand it over to Jason. He's going to talk about technology drivers and licensing equipment and software.
Yeah.
So our licensing line item has stayed flat. These are things like Microsoft for Windows and backup software, security software, also our accounting software. So holding that flat at $337,000. On the equipment and replacement side, this is a little trickier in that there is an increase from last year from $334,000 to $400,000. In reality, it's actually a $12,000 decrease because last year, while the budget was $334,000, we spent closer to $480,000. This year, we're spending closer to $470,000. So the makeup there comes from our Chromebook insurance account, which goes to purchasing new Chromebooks as well as Chromebook parts, which is something we've done historically. So we are looking at an increase to try and true up this account to get it closer to reality because we are seeing these larger numbers year over year as equipment prices increase. But the true number there is, I say, $470,095, and that difference of $70,095 comes from that Chromebook insurance. And then lastly, the software, the instructional software, these are items that we look at year over year to determine what's redundant, what we can add, what we can subtract. And in this particular year, we've subtracted down roughly 1%. So we're looking at 199,745 instead of the budget item of 201,893.
How many I'm sorry, can I ask a question? How many software programs do we buy? Like how big is that list?
What would you say? Probably in the 30s?
I would say that.
Say?
I would say it's under 50, but what we had found certainly during COVID, as a reminder, a lot of companies were giving you your software
Right.
products for free.
Right.
And then you got very used to them and they said, and now we're gonna charge. So after that, at that point, it was Maggie Seidel, as the Director of Instructional Technology, took a very hard look. And every year now we're looking for redundancies. So as other softwares decide that they are going to expand, then we say, okay, did you expand in a place that we can subtract from another? So I would say certainly under 50, but there are subscriptions here and there, but everyone gets a look every single year for that purpose.
But it's strange, so you guys don't do anything with Adobe? You're gonna,
No, they do.
We do.
Oh,
It's
okay.
right there.
They
'Cause
do.
I'm
These are
thinking-
all the ones they're using, but they
okay,
just they
that's
they
what I
did.
didn't
These are
understand.
some of the
Okay.
bigger,
These are just the bigger expenses.
Okay.
More and probably more groups use them.
Yeah.
More widely used. I'd imagine.
yes, we take a look at what is most sufficient for elementary, middle, and high school and what makes the most sense.
So what about what Dave is doing around the whole AI?
That doesn't necessarily fall in the software category here,
Okay.
okay? Certainly there are, as you would think, when the industry booms, people are coming out with new tools and
Right.
whatnot. You won't see those necessarily reflected here. We are still in the research stage.
Okay.
Because again, everyone's coming out with the new and fancy, and we want to make sure that we are making very informed decisions
Okay.
about what we will need.
Okay.
Jason, if I heard you following correctly on licensing, the flat number, so these are like our core licenses, none of them are going up.
Well, it's non-instructional software, so the distinction being made here is the difference between, say, something like BrainPop versus something like VMware. So that's where that breaks. As far as the not going up, it's also similar to the what have we gotten rid of, what are we adding to? So roughly everything's gone up. It's just a matter of
Gotcha, so there's some of that going on there.
Exactly.
You just landed at a flat number, because if they all stayed the same, I was like, are we gonna see a
Yeah.
big spike when they all go up next year?
Yeah.
I assume they go up every year, so
Correct.
you're balancing.
and we do try and do 3-year contracts as long as we can to kind of buffer that.
What year are we in with our VMware licensing, with the acquisition of Broadcom and everything else?
This is the year that we have to go back into it with Omnissa.
So next year we'll see an increase there, I'm assuming.
Looking at a 3-year, we don't have the numbers yet, but it's budgeted.
And we talked about the textbooks and stuff. In the old days, you could buy a textbook and it would last 10 years. In these days, you have to buy the digital textbooks, and they don't let that happen. So they make you re-up on a more regular basis.
For the most part, like around your AP texts, College Board asks you to give a really good look every 10 years, so we're still staying true there. Again, very much like when we engage in these electronic versions, we do so for multi-years. So we get the best deal that has us kind of locked in for a good price there.
As best we can do.
As best we can do.
I'd actually say I'm amazed at how well we keep these textbooks. As my son brings these tomes of textbooks home, and I'm amazed at how well they keep. So appreciate everything. Hope that's not a reflection on his usage, but
I wasn't gonna say it. That's what I was thinking. Those books look good. Crisp.
Cracks when you
Move to health insurance, we've talked quite a bit about it already, but this is kind of Amy's summary doc to go through with everybody.
Yeah, just because on that 3.91 slide, we had taken a look at the possible use of reserve. So just going to give you an overall health of the health insurance fund and kind of see why we thought we could utilize some of those reserves. So you'll see in fiscal year 24, we had a really good claims year. Our claims were down just shy of $1 million. In fiscal year 25, we're projected to be right back up that $1 million, about a 10% increase. And then again in fiscal year 26, you'll see about a 2.95% increase in those claims that's projected by our benefits consultants. So with the upticks in those last 2 years, makes up for your increase of that 4.9% that they had given us. And then if you look down to the last bullet down there, like just to reiterate, the locked in is actually the one that's giving us our projected 4.9 increase in cost to cover those claims and the premiums associated with it. And then for our health insurance line item, I just wanted to point out, because there's various roll-ups within the superintendent's budget, the line items. So just looking at our Cigna health insurance, our line item decrease is about $738,000, not including our dental, not including BOE retiree health, not including our wellness programs, things of that nature. So we're a little bit shy of $1 million on that decrease. And then in the fund overall, going back to that first bullet, our estimated state of reserves, as of the last quarterly report, we are projecting to be at about 35% of expected claims. And as Matthew stated earlier, our policy is 20 to 25% of expected claims, which could provide some flexibility if needed. But again, we just want to be cognizant and aware of any potential cliffs that creates. Any questions on that?
How do you? I guess I'm not an insurance guy.
I did the exact same thing. I just my brain just did the exact same thing. I have no way of asking.
2025 projected claims, and the year later, 2026
Yeah,
project.
but-
They're just so the projections keep going up. And do they project high so that we can come in low, or do they just?
So they look
think
at
we're
our
gonna get
previous
sicker, or-
claims data. They actually do it a few times a year for us. Our benefits consultants have a whole actuary team that put together the state of the market, our actual claims, the conditions that our members and their family members have that are impacting the fund, and they're the ones that come up with these projections based on all that information.
We can
Never
invite
gonna
you to
A little
the
science behind it.
Never going to project less, I guess.
No,
I mean,
actuarial.
even
No.
though maybe
Trend doesn't seem
medicine
to go
will be
that way.
getting healthier. I mean,
Yeah.
But I appreciate the question. It's interesting because it's a bump for 25, right? Because if you look at 26, it comes right back down. So it's
Correct.
interesting.
Is it that 24 was lower than expected, 25
Yes.
right sized
Would be,
it,
yeah.
and 26 lower?
Probably.
It's probably the assumptions.
We meet 4 times a year with a fascinating slide deck.
How much do they cost us?
Actually, not much. I think they're only like $70,000 a year.
Oh, wow.
They're pretty cheap.
That's worth
Locked in?
Yeah, our benefits consultants.
Pretty good.
For what they do
For what they're doing, yeah,
they're
that's
pretty
important.
cheap. I mean, they're very expensive.
Where are they in the budget? No.
All right, facilities and maintenance.
I'm going to start us off,
Oh.
and then I'll invite Kyla.
Okay.
So I'm going to take you through just some of the dollar values, and then I will invite up Kyle Loveland, who is here, and Jason can talk through some of our overall facilities and maintenance needs and what the buildings are looking like, and take you through the worksheets and the pictures afterwards. So that first column there for school equipment, these are our smaller equipment areas that our principals and teachers ask for, such as like our music equipment, our classroom furniture, teachers' furniture, tables, things of that nature. So this is the line item that was cut last year. And so we are asking for a modest increase of about $17,000 as a way to start working us back up to where we were. This line item was cut about $200,000 last year, I believe. So we're just starting to get back into getting some of those requests that the principals are asking for to rebuild their equipment. So about $17,000 increase there. Under the plant and maintenance, I'm not going to go too far into this because this is the substance of what Kyle and Jason will be taking you through. But some of the items that are included in here are HVAC, our snow removal, our grounds maintenance, things of that nature. And at the bottom, you'll see the increase of about $110,000. I just wanted to point out $50,000 of that is related to HVAC, about $15,000 of that is for our snow contract, and $45,000 relates to other property maintenance. So that's like the overall increase for things like windows and I don't know. Kyle can take you through that. And then lastly, on the utilities, they speak for themselves. The gas, propane, water, electricity, things of that nature, a $293,000 increase. And like I took you through on the line item, $277,000 of that is electricity related. And then $20,000 is the remainder for all the rest of the utilities.
So can I ask a question?
Go for it.
Okay. On the plant equipment maintenance, I know often we talk about shared services. And I don't know if this has come up before around like snow removal and grounds maintenance. Is there any way that we can maybe get the town to help on that?
On snow removal?
Yeah.
We've had some initial conversations this year because we did switch our longtime vendor went out of business. Had a new contract, realized that, wow, we were doing this on the cheap for
Right.
years with
That
the
was
current
us.
vendor we had, so there was a bump.
Yep.
There may be an opportunity to come back to it, maybe over the summer into next year and talk to Tom more about it. He seemed open to it. It got to a point where we had to get a contract done. He would have needed some more equipment, but I mean, we got the conversation down the road a little further this year than it has. So I think it's something we can come back to, and I think we're all feeling, I don't want to speak for Tom, but a little more comfortable with potentially looking at if they added some equipment, maybe we would pay for that equipment investment up front, and it would be more of a joint way to look at snow removal.
And we did a
Salaries.
1-year contract just for that
You
purpose.
did, okay.
Yeah.
We did.
Because I
It's
do
just a
remember the
1 year.
conversation
Yep.
that we were in this comfy position. Yeah.
Amy, on equipment, is this two things there? Is this another example of something you said we cut last year, now it's back, right? And you can't cut forever, right? You gotta get new equipment at some point. And then last year, when we cut, did we get some benefit of the Latimer stuff? If I remember correctly, there was some of that reuse.
You can talk about that a little bit,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I
Or Kyle even, yeah, big time.
So our facilities director is here to be the boots on the ground perspective of the schools, the actual need within the schools, just so we don't lose sight of it. Josh, I know that's something that you were very interested in. So I will have Kyle come up.
Can I ask one more question before you go? When we're looking at the school equipment, so you say last year we budgeted 146,000, and you said we had cut 200 off that? So basically, they're coming in at still a cut. You know what I mean? So they're basically coming in with
Right.
way
From a
down
couple years ago.
Right.
from a couple years ago. So they're not gaining back any leverages they had previous,
Right.
because they're just basically trying to be
You
flat
set
for
it-
what
yeah,
they need.
You set a new
Base.
baseline and you're crawling your way up,
Exactly.
yeah.
Yeah, so
Good
this is
description.
this
Yeah.
is a lower baseline for that.
Yeah.
That's you don't get it back.
Yeah, that's to Josh.
the new
You don't get it back.
I mean, to speak to the Latimer project, the FF&E budget of that, which comes with state reimbursement, allowed you to get brand new furniture for that whole building and then distribute
Oh, right.
furniture to the
Yeah.
other.
That's right.
Josh, or they
Yeah.
realize they don't need to spend $300,000.
I doubt that, but
Well, I think if I'm following, last year was 146 with a lot of benefit from the Latimer
for the
stuff.
latter, like
Yeah.
Neil's saying,
This year's 164 without that benefit.
right?
So we'll see. Right? See, I think it's 146 plus something from another category.
And our friend Kyle will tell us more about that.
Thank you, Kyle.
Hey, one more little piece that even complicates that equation. We go back 5-6 years when we increased our open choice population to a new threshold and got funding. We got an increase in the choice grant. We moved equipment onto that choice grant. So it was, your 150 in operating plus your 150 on the open choice grant, you're down 10 kids. We don't buy that equipment out of the grant too. So it's a little bit of an interesting
It's a moving
game to
target.
kick the can, yeah.
Either way, it feels like this year is going to have to be more with less on the equipment.
Yes.
Correct. So I was thinking.
Sure.
So as you talked about before with this, there's kind of two major drivers to a lot of this, which was HVAC and snow. We touched on snow already. I'd like to touch on the HVAC part. HVAC, we've kind of dealt with the fact that, we've been maintaining this equipment for so many years, and it's kind of at the point where it's reaching its kind of end of life. It's there. It's becoming more and more difficult and costly to fix. You're at the point where some of it we can't find parts for. We're having to retrofit things. We're making do with what we have, but it's not very cost effective anymore. It's not only the equipment, it's also our BMS system, which controls all of our equipment in all of our schools. So that's where a lot of this money is that's where you see this increase.
Yeah.
Jason, you wanna walk through the CNR? Sure. Start that and then.
We could have,
My apologies.
We're getting Jessica back online. Maybe her phone died. Don't take it personally.
Are we doing CNR?
There you go.
Jason, are you doing CNR?
Yeah.
She don't answer.
Get rid of her.
Oh no.
Yeah. Okay, great. No, that's great.
Yeah, let's keep going.
Okay, Jason.
Yeah, we're just.
sorry. So what's presented
my own
here,
world.
That's as much patience as I could have.
Yeah, I was like the same thing. I'm like, okay, 80 days, kick it in.
This is like real life buffering.
It should have been videotaped.
It was.
so if I could direct you back to your packet. We've presented two CNR columns here. The first is needs-based and totals out to 1.35 million. This is where we would like to be this year. The second column is our traditional 550,000 budget. So it's a sense of where were our priorities, what were we looking at until we knew we had to stay within that now more than 20-year-old $550,000 requirement. So some of the larger items that we would like to do are a number of bathroom fix-ups, not necessarily full-blown renovations, but almost more of a bath fitters kind of approach, where we're not gutting the bathroom and starting over, but we are making it better than it has been. These dollars tend to be a bit trickier, so if things are going to be as tight as 550,000, I'm hesitant to take on a project that could have more of a contingency to it with margins this close. So the 550,000 is both less and more conservative to stay within that number.
Jason, just to get back to everybody's favorite topic. So if we had the higher number, there's two buses.
Yeah.
I just with Matt's presentation, it was just really long, right? So kind of perfect world. I guess where I'm going with this is, so perfect world, we like two.
Right,
I think
if we wanted to stay on track with the age of buses,
Yeah.
I'd like to do two. But if we can at least find funding for one somewhere else, that's outside of the 550. So along the lines of the lesser amount and the more conservative amount, it comes down to things like equipment and so items like phone systems and tractors, the things that the budget is going to be more predictable. I'd also want to point out.
Josh wants to go.
No, I was going to Jason was done.
Just also want to point out that there's a large item for HVAC in there, and to sort of piggyback on Kyle's discussion about that, as he said, our equipment is really being pushed to the limits. We've been for years keeping things moving and repairing what we have, not replacing. So there are some items that just flat out need replacements, and these are large, like rooftop units. These items have large price tags. So I'm trying to hold a $200,000 line item in there for those types of things. So what he was talking about was more of the operating repair budget. This is more of the replacement equipment budget. It's also notable that the state is now pushing the AQI reports, so we're taking even closer looks at this. So we foresee needs to do more replacements out of those discussions.
Question.
Yes.
Where, no, you're not done yet, I'll wait for you.
No, I was just about to say comments, questions, concerns.
So, column one is what needs, wish list, column two is traditional, okay.
And we may
Wait, I always-
have an opportunity, Brad, just so you know, as we go through the process, to not add to the structure of the operating this year, I wouldn't think, but to look at that other list and have conversations about available reserves to get more of these things done, potentially.
So where in the cost does this show up again? That's what I always get confused every year. Is it under operations, which is like that touchy area, or is it under fixed costs, or is it?
So you want to take them back to take you right back to the line item, and we can
It's
show
the
you.
line item that Jonathan asked about.
That's where the bus.
It is page 3 of the line item, and it's under maintenance of plant. And then all the way at the bottom of that section, the CNR chargeback, you'll see fiscal year 25 is the 550,300, and then fiscal year 26 is the 690,300. So it's that $140,000 increase for the bus. So this is where the CNR2, I think he has it labeled as that second column on Jason's worksheet that he's working through. That's everything that we are proposing to do under that traditional payback of that 550,300. And that column 1 is everything we really should be doing
Right, because it's
to
not really
appropriately
a
maintain
want,
for our
it's
facilities.
a need.
Right.
It's
We're
like
not-
there's an extreme needs, a needs,
Right.
and there's not even a want.
Right.
Right, we can go back to that analysis, remember we looked at 2 years ago of the percentage of the things that needed to get done immediately from the Tecton analysis is like 1% of what they offered back then. So we are in that list of, we're keeping up, and we put pictures not for dramatic effect, but there's some things to go through here just to show you the conditions of some of the things we're talking about, just to give you.
I also think it might be helpful to know some of these things from how many years they've been sitting here on this need list and haven't been addressed.
Jason has all
I
that.
think that would be helpful to me to know how many years have we been putting this out.
Sure.
Yeah, I think
So say anything that has the word bathrooms, at least 5.
yeah, because, I mean, I think that I think, you see it here, you don't know the depth.
Right.
On the screen, on TV. Okay. Go ahead.
I can still show you my 4th grade.
No, we have color pictures, there you
Okay.
go.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, my God.
Now, where is this?
Those first two were Terrafil.
Yep.
Is that downstairs, Terrafil?
Yes.
There is no upstairs.
That's right.
I was so confident in that downstairs answer.
I'm thinking central in the basement is what I was
Well,
thinking.
there's a gross one
No,
then.
no, I was thinking central basement.
That
Yeah,
is-
I'm sorry.
That one's moaning Riddles in there. That's a scary
Got me, Jen, got me.
in here.
It's like flooding.
one. No, it's, yeah.
That one, just for a background story, there was 3 sinks there, but the structure behind the wall is actually deteriorated so bad from over the years that the sinks are actually starting to peel off of the wall. So one of them came off the wall, and the board there is our attempt to provide legs because the kids kept kicking the legs out.
That's squadron. Okay.
So that's our temporary fix, although that's not how we want to leave it, but that's on our list of
Not ideal.
I think that's on the.
And no soap.
It's on the other wall. You can't see it in the picture. It's on the left-hand wall.
Soap
And
is
the first
extra
two
terrible.
pictures,
I'd like to put soap in the
first
budget.
two were
Terrifil.
And
Terrafil.
this one's Squadron. Squadron banner.
God, even prisons look better than this.
No, it's
That's-
tough.
About that little paint on the wall?
That's Squadron.
They're covering up,
Covering up
So-
kids writing on the walls and things like that.
Things of that nature.
Yeah, things of that nature.
Things of that nature.
Artistic abilities.
It's like before they painted the walls.
I was gonna, that's why I'm asking that. Did they paint the wall?
The walls, it's blended in more now. That was kind of in the process, but so it doesn't look as bad, but it's still kind of patchy. Yep.
Give me a can of paint, I'll go over and paint, okay?
Well, they painted, most of
Yeah,
Squadron's downstairs
Yeah.
is all redone. It actually made a significant,
So the CNR wish list versus traditional, is there flexibility?
It's not
It's
even a
not a
wish
wish list.
It's
or
needs.
Sorry,
Yeah,
I
it's to fix-
misspoke.
It's to fix things like this.
I
Yeah.
misspoke.
yeah, there's, I don't want to speak for
No.
the folks behind me, but as we go through, and it's that reserve conversation of
Okay.
what can we get done in priorities, that fund, the capital reserve fund, is an area that
Yeah.
can support projects like this, operations, so it doesn't have, however, there's been a lot of desire for that one pot of money. It's like anything else,
Gotcha.
right? You gotta figure out.
Best to use it.
Yep.
Got it.
So on the CNR, before I say anything, where do we stand right now? Is the budget is just looking, couple things. The budget's going in just saying stay at 550.
Yeah.
Which I believe that number, when did 550 get established?
You said the same thing last year.
I'm gonna say it again. Right? It's like 20 years old. It's like an
Easy.
allowance from 20 years ago
Yeah.
that we're trying to live on.
Yeah.
And I appreciate the capital reserve stepping in the way it stepped in for the bus last year, but I said it last year, right? The bus was purchased, so we stayed at 550. Here we are again, right? Asking for, is there another way? And I get it, everything's a trade-off, I'm just putting it on the table. Getting to like 1.3, 1.2 isn't gonna just happen, right? But should we be talking about a step-up plan at some point, like a 5-year plan? We talk about 5-year plans, where the CNR, we put in instead of 550, we try and get it up to, I don't know, 150 a year, and start working our way up to a more realistic number where there can be budgetary, strategic control over how we do these things. And then if there's big items, we go for that pot that everyone's going to. It just feels hard to look at those things, see the list always growing, things not getting done that need to get done, because we're trying to make it happen on an allowance from 20 years ago. Again, always considerate of budget. It just feels like 550. If that was the number we were using to do this stuff 20 years ago, it's hard to expect to maintain it 20 years later. So we should be looking
Yeah.
to see.
Don't disagree at all. I mean, the funding mechanism of that is a joint conversation with the Board of Finance.
Yep.
So that would have to be an agreed upon.
You can't shift from the healthcare reserves to the CNR reserves.
Be nice.
150 grand a year.
Sounds risky, shady. But I know, Amy, it's something you and Lisa, and I just put it out as part of the budget, and I'll keep putting it out, right?
Yeah.
I just feel like it's important.
Absolutely.
Agree?
Absolutely.
Yep.
I mean, I'll just piggyback. Like you talked about earlier, you talked about the experience, right? The experience is it's hard to talk about that without thinking about the experience they're having. Absolutely.
capital improvement plan, just to revisit again, Jason will hit on the I think it's 2 or 3 items only in year 1 of capital. At the very onset of this process and conversations, we did it move out some of the larger capital projects, large roofing project, felt we had a little life on it. So again, that certainly feels like the theme a little bit as we're moving through. But Jason, just to revisit what was on there.
Sure. So the current capital improvement plan is for $850,000. $600,000 of that is for paving and line striping. So this is in our parking lots and our sidewalks. We would like to make that an every other year item, similar to what we do with flooring, network infrastructure, and security dollars. So this year, we would be doing the security dollars and this new painting and striping piece. I've been working with Tom Roy on this, who has an outside consulting company that has developed a plan for the town, relatively low dollars as consultants go. So that would be on top of what we've identified, looking to them for both a fresh set of eyes to see if our immediate priorities make sense and if they are adding anything to that. So we want a very focused approach to how we spend those paving dollars. And then security issues, so more of replacing security cameras, improving the types of systems we have in place for lockdowns. Not so much a new initiative, but more of the ongoing funding of what we have in place. What's no longer on the plan, as we mentioned, was the Henry James roof, which is now at 25 years. It's generally okay. We are seeing some areas where we're patching fairly regularly on an annual basis, but a roof is something that we can patch and move on with, so that's been pushed out. We also looked at some potential changes at the high school for the turf situation there for athletics. That's also been moved out to out years.
I think it's worth. I was just gonna say, like, I appreciate the breakdown of schools, like that we were just looking at. And I think it's worth noting that Latimer didn't have any increases.
I noticed that too.
That's right.
But like the point is, like, I mean, yes, it costs money to build that school. It's going to cost money to bring some resources and some special needs back in, but it's an investment, right? And if we make the strategic investments, it can save us some money, right, down the road. I think that's worth pointing out.
Yep. Thank you.
All I was gonna say is keep me honest here. Just to remind folks, we took $1.5 million off of the capital.
3.2.
3.2 million. So
Matt, do you know where the field because it'll come back up?
Yeah.
That's what we took out. Just any update on that? I think you're going to reassess it.
Yeah, so we've had a couple things going on. I mean, I would just step back and say, I think it needs a whole new conversation, much like the facilities plan. When we talk about the strategic plan, right, we really focused on year 1, again, post-Latimer for a few years. I think the feedback of the board and some of the priorities they want to look at, we need to reboot that whole 6 years so we can get back to producing a plan that's in comparison to what the debt service is and really start having those real conversations again of what is the next large priority. But it's going to come down to a question of, do we want to relook at turf versus the reconfiguration of the grass versus you got to redo the other turf, which is coming up. So Jeff has and Jason have some design dollars that they are looking at kind of those things right now. So when the conversation is ready to be had, I'm seeing that like into next year, we'll be ready.
Yeah, because that turf field, from my understanding, pretty high demand. We talked about
Huge demand.
to get on there. People are going late at night.
Yeah.
It's like morning through night. That thing's getting beat on.
So when we looked at that grass reconfiguration and that cost with all the ADA, I mean, it just pulled you right off of those are practice fields. That's not a wise investment.
Yep.
Maybe we should look at a second turf, like a lot of schools have gone in that direction. So
just, turf. Remember we had that flooding situation on the field? Did that not help?
Nope.
They had to fix it.
So
They replaced it, or was it a fix?
So I thought it was that's what I was thinking.
No, it was
It wasn't,
no.
it was just a fix, it was just, okay.
Yeah. But the turf, it is, I mean, they have a 10-year cycle. So that's actual, just the cycle of, it's not like something happened or a poor design.
Yeah.
There's a 10-year cycle of when you put a new carpet down and the fill that you need to come back to every 10 years or so.
Okay.
And you can get a little beyond it, but you gotta test it for compression and all those things to make sure it's safe. But to
Okay.
Josh's point, that thing is used
All the time.
all the time.
All the time.
And I just wanna make sure that we note that it's not just the schools.
100%,
Like,
Correct.
yes.
Other, the town,
Town.
yeah,
Good point.
the town does
and
too.
the tennis courts,
Yeah.
those two things are
Yeah.
huge for the town too.
Yeah. So maybe, no, go ahead. Go ahead, no.
No, I was just making a snarky comment.
I was gonna do the same, go ahead. That's why I said, go ahead.
All right, thank you, Jason. Last piece of the puzzle is just a review of the revenues and grants that Amy will go through. And then- Oh, Melissa, all right.
Come on up.
Welcome.
Big kids. Okay, so page six, it should be labeled page 16. This is the summary.
I appreciate the numbers.
Summary outline of our federal and state grants that we get on an annual basis. The federal is dispersed followed by the state. Just sort of the total there projected for 26, and then a little breakout of where we spend the money. Happy to describe any of these in detail or answer questions, but we really wanted to draw your attention to the major changes, which the two primary drivers were touched on throughout the day so far. But if you look at the totals at the bottom, budgeting a little over $5.5 million worth of grants. And then if you actually flip to the next page, you'll see the comparison there with the current year budget. So at the very top would be our total gross expenditures with the grants netted out beneath that. So for the current year, fiscal year 25, budgeted just over $6 million. So our 5.5 that we're projecting is a decrease of about $534,000. So the two primary drivers behind that are the excess cost, which we talked about. We're expecting a shortfall of 411 this year, directly as a result in the change in the reimbursement rate, the reduction there. And then the other 100,000 approximately is from the open choice, which we talked about due to the decrease in the number of students. So those are the two primary drivers behind the change in the grants. Questions before we go to
Is our decrease in open choice knocking us from a certain percentage down to a different percentage?
No, not yet.
Not yet.
But it's
Are
hovering.
we
hovering
getting close to that?
What was a challenge, I don't want to speak for you, Neil, for the past couple years, the stressor is
Four.
our enrollment was going up so much at the elementary level, it's like you had to bump up enrollment
Yep.
that much more. Enrollment being a little flat, hopefully that helps the
Helps us,
challenge a
okay.
little bit,
Yeah,
but we'll
right.
see.
Okay.
Yeah, but we haven't fallen below the 4%, but we're right there.
Correct. I knew that.
Yeah.
Like
Right.
4.1, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, no, it's
It's a challenge.
a challenge come summer as, families make different decisions.
Sure.
And trying to grab another kid is hard when you're getting down against the deadline at the end of summer.
Yeah.
And I know we do a lot of grants, like we apply for an abundant amount. How do we stack up to our peers with that? Do we know that? Like, are we in line? It's probably comparable, right? I mean,
Something I can look
I don't
into
know.
with
It's
my,
not-
with my colleagues.
no, because I've always thought that was a plus for us. I always think we do well there.
What's that?
I got a question.
Sure.
So, going back to what Neil is saying, and I know I brought this up before when we were talking about open choice, what happens if we really do go low? And are we anticipating and putting in some kind of, plan to kind of address that gap should that happen?
So the funding mechanism, when you're at 4%, is that the reimbursement rate through the open choice program is $10,000 per student. If you go down below 4%, it's $8,000 per student. So take 165 students,
That's 2,000.
and it's 2,000, so that's about the amount of money. If you drop below,
300-some thousand bucks.
But to answer you directly, no. Because and I totally understand, to put a contingency line item in 300,000 that's not being utilized right now
Yeah.
with the other decisions and the other things we're not doing, it's just, these are just decisions we'd have to make. I mean, they're very good
We
questions.
don't plan on getting a
You know?
bad grade.
No,
Much like Josh on the flip end, should we have a scale plan to climb that CNR forward? Yep. Should we have, in a perfect world, a contingency plan to respond to outplacement a little bit larger than we do, or in this area? Yes, but when are the right times to do those pieces is the harder question, because they come from somewhere,
Yeah.
right?
and I'm only
All
saying
really good
because
good points.
it's happening across.
Yeah.
And so something is happening within choice, and I don't know if that's a discussion for them to, are they investigating and seeing? But it's probably gonna continue, you know, so.
And again, I don't think it's a 25 thing, but a 26 thing for kind of, like, it would be great, just like, I don't want to say outside the box, but just different, because it does feel like everything's a trade-off, but revenue is a thing, right, that can grow. Costs are going up, we're trying to just keep services, it feels like, level. Like, I love the whole special ed approach with 2 farms, it's like I said, right, invest to make. It would be great for like next year's budget discussion or something, just like some other things, just like brainstormed ideas of like where we could possibly grow revenue and what it would look like. I mean, I just feel like that's maybe the untapped bucket, and I know we're not profiting off things, right? We don't do that, but offsets. Are there other offsets somewhere? Because it does feel like, again, I was like, costs are going to continue to rise. We don't want our services to decline. We've got to keep a stable budget. Is revenues the bucket where there's maybe something there if we start looking at it differently? I don't know. I'm just looking.
And I think, I mean, you mentioned it, so I'll just reiterate. The huge bucket to ensure that we close out is the one we have in motion and we're planning on. Because, again, in terms of moving the needle, each tuition, each student brought back, each service provided there is of order of magnitude, right? As compared to, hey, are we raising, I mean, this is just an example on the other end, are we raising our gym fee for an out-of-town hourly rate, right? I mean, those are other things you can look at, but where are you spending the energies? But I think you're onto something, and
Like at the adult education, again, throwing out an idea because I just saw it, like, is there an untapped market for adult education? Just things like that.
yeah.
I was just gonna make a suggestion. It seems like a perfect issue to bring up in the finance committee. Right? That's kind of why we're here. So maybe something to take away a little bit.
Perfect. Any other questions on the revenues and grants? No. All right. So what I would say is, and Jeff, I don't know how we want to frame this, but a lot of information. We end up in the place where we're in a little information overload, I'm sure. But we have Tuesday night. We have an open slate agenda. We have a lot of really good questions, perspectives, and topics that came up. We know what the landscape is, I think, of the fiscal challenge and the conversations that are coming down the road, and things are changing daily. I mean, I talked to Lisa yesterday, the fact that, the ECS spike comes through in that order of magnitude is a positive thing for both the Board of Ed and the town. But hey, that gets offset a little bit by the fact they cut our excess costs, right? So it's like at one, every time there's news in one area, it seems to be a little news in the other, and we got to let it settle. But I would push the question back to the board members of what would they like to see or talk about on Tuesday night to help us get to a decision point at the end of the month, right? I don't know if you want to add anything to that. We're open ears. Again, we have a lot of information at our fingertips, but we got a one-day turnaround to get that to you for the conversation in terms of Tuesday night. So I put it out there.
Want me to say?
Well, I mean, it's obviously, I'm assuming you guys want to talk about Terrafil some more.
I'd like to talk about that. I was curious if we could also see, is there easily to get a percentage of kids at each elementary school with an IEP or 504 by elementary school?
So we have some additional
document.
information. We have
Is
some.
that in it? Well, that's not in there.
the incident rate is.
Oh, it
So
is.
we could easily get numbers
Oh, here you go.
Yeah,
that represent that
yeah,
incident
we
rate.
have that document.
It's on page 3 of the next section of our
Okay.
stuff. I think so.
Second to last page of the whole big package. Penultimate page.
Put it- no,
Penultimate, yes.
Well, yes, we can get those.
Well,
That
yes,
was for you.
isn't that fancy? And then I was curious, Neil,
Yes.
because I love your numbers. I was wondering, could we also see class sizes historically in K and 1 at Terrafil, and then what they were when they left at 6th grade? Like, historically, is there growth every year or not growth? You know, what did they start out at and what did they leave at? Like, is there a chance we'll get some more over time? And so this historical data I thought maybe could help us.
Building a case.
How far back you want me to go?
Yes. I see what's happening here.
What do you think?
Easy.
5 is easy.
Easy.
Yeah.
Right.
I might do
Memories
10
that
for
one
you.
day.
Right. Middle of
so
the,
who's
middle of the
taking
Super
these
Bowl.
now?
I see it. Tapping away.
Yeah.
So I would say, Matt and Jeff, I'm with you, Matt, right? Like, I feel like this workshop's great in Tuesday. One thing I would say that I feel like for us as a board, as a group, as a team, is just, I would love on Tuesday to really get a feel for where everyone stands. Like, there's an element of, right, like, I look around the room and just about everyone has more experience than me. And I know I'm vocal, I'm speaking up and things. Like, I know there's got to be thoughts on, like, I know the number's the number, and I'm just throwing stuff out there for consideration. But I just want to get to wherever we get, it's going to be a hard number, right? Like, I think this is going to be very hard. There's going to be hard decisions. It's going to be a number no one loves, and again, it's the if no one likes it, it's probably right. But I don't want to get to the end, and I've learned more from last year. I was more observing where we get to the end, and it's like everyone's not on board, right? I don't want to get to the end where someone's maybe just quietly not happy, abstaining, staying out of the discussion. I want this to really be a group of 8 coming together to say, hey, no one's going to like this, but we got there as a team. So I would just throw that out there on Tuesday. Like, I would love to hear from everyone else, like, where you really truly stand. Because, again, I'm throwing stuff out there, but I'm the least experienced person here because Jess isn't here.
So we can talk about how to frame that, you know what I mean? I think there's different ways to frame that and put it in terms of putting up a scenario and having people discuss what their input and feedback on it is. And there's no vote on Tuesday night.
That's what I was going to say. Right.
It gives an opportunity to do that and be thoughtful and then take that feedback away again, and then I can bring scenarios, motions on the 28th, you know?
Because a number of times I'll say something, and then like Tara or Lydia will be like, "Yeah, we had this before," and it's like, "Oh, I get it now," right? Like I feel like there's so many of you that have so much that I just would love to hear all of your thoughts.
I think you bring an awful lot to the table.
Absolutely.
Happy to have your input.
Appreciate it.
Anything else on that front for Tuesday? I mean, that's a big one, right? If we frame it so that we have a scenario out there and, hey, how are we feeling about it? And I think that'd be helpful for our administration because that's tangible takeaways in terms of things that could move the number. Because for me, from I don't know if strategy is the right word or not, probably not, but from moving the ball down the field point of view, whether it's a Terrafil or it's something else, we have to capture what it means. Like, it goes from being a philosophical conversation to a dollar conversation, and where do we find those certain things, or are we okay going up, or would we like to go down, or right? That's really what my team needs to know to navigate the ball. And I think that kind of format would get us there.
The only thing I'd say is I don't have a problem going on. We can just go around the room and just kind of check in with everybody, but my only caveat, right, is it's so early in the game.
That's what I was going to say. Thank you.
There's so many levers that have or haven't been pulled yet. So we just got to remember that that's a snapshot in time, and you could change or whatever along the way.
So even that
We don't have the color sheets.
Is it early in the game?
I was just gonna say,
Yeah,
is it?
I think
I just mean it.
Every week or two weeks and 3 days.
Right.
I'm with you. I don't think it's that early in the game. I think that it's important that if we have questions, now is the time to ask them.
That's all I mean.
I think that we have.
I just meant
yeah.
sort of early in the conversations we're having. Like, we just saw Matt's
We
cut
just saw his
budget, so that's
I
all
would
I'm saying.
imagine that at the end of Tuesday, though, we will all have a feeling.
Yeah.
Because we're asking questions now, we're gonna send more questions over the weekend as we go home and think about
Absolutely,
it.
yeah.
We
Reach
can
out,
email
call,
questions in.
email.
Yeah.
But
Yep.
the beauty of this team and the team you have, Matt, is that you bring answers to us
Yep.
as we ask. So I think that the more questions and the more ideas, then at the end of Tuesday, I think we should have an idea of how everyone's sitting. And if anyone has more
No, I don't
questions,
disagree, yeah.
But the thing I would say, if there's questions that are being asked, the questions have to be, we all have to be informed if you really want to get us to this, so that we understand, and it's not that you're asking about something that I don't know that may change my mind or change someone else's mind. I personally don't know that's why I asked about the sheets, right? Those usually come later, and I know that's where I spend a lot of my time, right? And we've talked about that
Yeah.
before.
The financial numbers in the line item are what is in the sheets.
Okay.
So.
you already have them.
Well,
Yeah, the only thing that's not there is we put an explanation.
That's right.
So, yep.
Well, that's my point, right? Like, before we close here, if that's where we're leading to, is everything everyone's thinking should be on the table now. Tuesday we discuss it, because I'm looking at the calendar, I think that's it until the 25th.
Where we vote.
Yep.
Yep.
So this is the get it all out there. Tuesday's the vet whatever's remaining, and then it's vote, so.
Well, clearly, I have already gotten all of my thoughts out.
Nice job, Jen.
I'm feeling
Thank you.
good
Well
at
done.
least, and I'm
And some people may need to
Well done.
think so they don't say anything.
Right.
Because you all know I am not shy about saying stuff. So
Okay.
if we get what we need, I think, especially around the tariff, because we can truly have an open conversation.
Yeah.
Then
And I am 100% open to that.
Okay.
That topic's a $100,000 topic, so think of it in the scope of the whole
That's
thing, is all I
right.
would
That's
say.
right.
$89 million
And
budget.
another-
$89 million budget, it's $100,000. So we can make whatever decision people support.
Yeah.
I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
But
But it
that's
can't be
not
a
a
whole
huge
bunch of
needle mover for me from
Yeah.
start to finish.
Yeah.
And then, because I bring it up.
Not in terms of importance, but of dollars. just to
Absolutely agree with you. And CNR, in fairness to you and Amy and Lisa and whoever, is that anything we're gonna be able to do anything with on Tuesday, or no, just that discussion's gonna happen somewhere else, and that's fine, it's on the table.
Yeah, I think you can give your opinion on it. Structurally, it has to happen somewhere else if you want it
So I
operating.
just wanted
Part
to,
of us.
Yeah, that's all.
Josh, I'll just say, like, I agree 1,000% with what you just said, by the way.
thank you.
And I was looking for the slide to get my thoughts together, but if you go back to the beginning, the per pupil expenditure, the 10-year average, the 5-year average, the other towns, et cetera, and if we just, to wrap this up, if we started at 4.37 with some of the proposals you put in, we can get to 3.91.
Right.
Me personally, and I'll put it out there, if we're within the 5-year average, I'm good. So I'll just say it, that's my thought. I've always said that I probably one of the more conservative people on this board, right? But at the end of the day, I put my faith in the people that we have hired to do this, and that's you guys. So I think this is a very responsible budget. I think it's on point, quite honestly. So, I mean,
And just to say it, the 5-year average is 3.76. Is that what you were looking at?
yeah, I mean,
No, just to put a number to
I'll
what
even
you
say
were
if the
looking
first number's a 3, I mean, that's we're between a 2.9 and a 3.9 essentially right now.
Yeah.
Kind of, right? I mean,
yeah, and we're coming off, I'll say it again, with special ed, we're coming off of 4.6 fixed. So
Correct.
we're talking about trying to get to a number.
correct.
4.6 is fixed, special ed plus fixed is all fixed. 4.6, how do we
Which is
get to
amazing,
it?
in my opinion. I
Yeah,
mean,
you have to cut.
it really is.
So I think that would be really good dialogue around the table.
And when you talked about, when you put up the slide, it said requested new staff, 0. I mean, that's powerful.
Yeah.
I mean, you were given requests or received requests from your principals, and your response was not now.
You're starting,
And they're on board with that.
Are they really?
The principals?
Right, because last year we saw a survey, remember we opened up the year, with Maggie giving
They're willing
reports
to
of
do
the
it.
survey.
Maybe
And
that's a better way.
I was gonna say, because they came back and said that survey showed that they weren't happy because of some of the things that they wanted and they didn't get. Remember, the beginning of the year when Maggie gave that presentation, the results of her survey
For staff.
for the staff.
Yeah, it wasn't about staff requests though.
No, it wasn't, but that's why I said to him,
Right, he was
were they
asking
really
about staff.
happy? I mean,
No, I'm not, nobody's jumping up and down about the budget.
Right.
My team is very supportive of the strategy and where we are,
Right.
and the recognition, and we can have this data Tuesday, of the significant investments this board's made over the last 3 to 5
Right.
years. I mean, we get caught very much in the 1 year window, which I totally respect and understand.
Mm-hmm.
We've been very responsive in trying to juggle the requests versus the reallocations over time.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Jen?
I wanted to say that maybe on Tuesday too, we should put that slide up again. That one that, it was not really a slide, but make it into a slide, that supplemental, that first
The
page.
supplemental.
Yes, that one was good on there, that I don't know, we really did talk about.
Which
the-
one?
The what?
Which one?
The staffing that
That
the board
showed
has
the
supported.
positions that have been.
yeah, that's what I was saying. We
Yes.
would put that up in terms of a frame of reference. It takes you beyond just the 1 year grind, which
Right.
is tough.
Yeah,
we did ask for that.
Yeah.
Long
It's in
ago.
there.
I looked at it, I just didn't know if other
You have
people
the
like.
information.
It's in
your
it's in that supplemental in there. Yeah.
First page supplemental
Yeah.
materials.
All right.
And I liked it because
I know.
what Neil didn't know was every time you say that we don't have, I used to go and put it in an Excel spreadsheet. So when you asked for it, I was like, yes.
All right, guys. I think we know. Anything else for Tuesday?
I'm interested to see what we will see on Tuesday.
I appreciate all you guys' hard work. This is, as Matt said, and Brian just kind of reiterated without saying it, it's a maintenance budget. It's a maintenance. There's no extras there, no bells and whistles, and the numbers are what they are. So just appreciate it. If for some reason you guys think about anything else for Tuesday, just whatever, text me, email me, Matt. Obviously, but just be cognizant, as we said. They really only have like a 1 day
The data
turnaround.
really get-
Yeah. So. But anyways,
Perfect. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you for
Appreciate
your.
everybody.
Appreciate your time.
Here.
appreciate everybody's.
Thank you to our
This
guests.
is very helpful.
Hope you had as much fun as
Thanks,
we did.
Kyle. Thanks, Melissa.
For over 40 years, SCM has been the voice of our town.
Bringing us together through local programming,
Education and live broadcasts.
SEM isn't just about television.
It's about empowering our community.
Ensuring our voices are heard during government meetings. And celebrating milestones.
like our high school graduations.
But today, SEM faces a challenge.
Our funding structure is based on television subscriptions.
And it's no secret, people have been cutting the cord.
With a shift to internet-only subscriptions,
SEM receives less revenue.
Even though all our programming is freely available online.
We need your support.
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 Your donation can make a difference.
It will ensure that SCM remains open.
Continues to educate our youth and keeps our community informed.
Thanks to SEM, I've been honing my creative skills, helping me work towards my college degree.
SCM is crucial for keeping our community connected.
SCM isn't just here to broadcast local events. They're actually preserving Simsbury's history.
Join us.
Join us in preserving Simsbury's voice.
Simsbury's voice.
Together we can ensure that SCM continues to thrive
For generations to come.
Visit our website
Or scan the QR code on your screen to make your donation.
Every contribution
counts.
Thank you for supporting Simsbury Community Media.
where your town
Your schools
And your government
come together.